start this thing because, like you said, I am late.
Yeah. Late as hell.
Can you?
I'm about to leave.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Black Perspective.
No, you said, hey, everybody.
This dude acting like I'm not live. What's wrong with you, man?
My bad. I thought you weren't live. My bad.
What is wrong with this guy? All right. So anyway, y'all see it's fun in the building. You're tuning into the Pro Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. This is the deep reading of The Wretched of the Earth. This is episode 5 of 20, pages 48 to 60. Apologies for being a little late. I just wanted to get some breakfast, you know.
Procrastinated. He didn't value us, audience.
No, I value you, especially you, Machiavelli. Yeah.
Appreciate it, homie.
All right. So anyway, so in Urban Militias. So on page 48. Oh yeah. So anyway, so like I said, KWAZ Radio, Bit of Medicine podcast. Check that out. It was a good episode yesterday. Revolutionary Matron. Check her out later today. Harsh Reality podcast. You just make sure you subscribe, get the notification bell, and when they put up something, you will be one of the first notified. All right. So let's just read this page 48.
Yesterday.
You said what?
This review from yesterday.
Review from yesterday?
Yeah.
All right, so if anybody wants to review from yesterday, what you could do is open up the video from yesterday and you get your review. Now, I'm joking. This is that we actually read page 48, a little bit of page 48 yesterday, so it will technically be a review. It says, it then became evident for everyone and even for the colonists that things cannot go on as they are and have to change, right? So basically, you know, just to give some context, the colonials know that they cannot suppress people forever. The thing is this, that, you know, technically they can, and technically they will. Okay? Technically they can, and technically they will get away with subjugating people forever. Because, again, like I said, one of the most important things that we have to realize is that when you have an economic system, right, that economic system does not go away on its own, or impossibly it doesn't even go away ever. There will always be a colonial system on this planet, more or less, as far as we can tell. There will always be a colonial system. Now, can you destroy a colonial system locally? Yes. Can you destroy it globally? No. Just like there's always going to be a fishing economy, there's always going to be a farming economy, there's always going to be a hunter-gatherer economy, there's always going to be a herdsman economy, you know? There's always going to be a colonial economy. Your objective is not so much to destroy colonial economies, because you can't. Your objective is to not live in one. You know, I go back to that video I saw the other day, which was the Wode Maya video. And what was interesting was that here the Himba of Namibia, they tell you that that they're not indigenous to that land, that their herdsmen, their nomadic lifestyle actually imposed on the hunter-gatherers that were there. That would be, if I'm not mistaken, the Khoisan. So the Khoisan were already there, and the Himba came in, and after an economic dispute, if you will, you know, because they're what do you call it? Sorry, I'm feeling something weird on my thing. All right, their nomadic lifestyle conflicted with the hunter lifestyle. In a sense, maybe sometimes the hunters would shoot a cow or something, and they'd say, wait, those are our cows. Those are our cows, pretty much. Whatever. Point is, eventually they go to war, and the Himba win, and that's why the economic system of Namibia and that particular locale does not include the Khoisan. The Khoisan were forced to move, if not were killed. Obviously, some of them moved, a lot of them moved. But the point being that economic systems clash, even earlier economic systems. If you do not develop your own better economic system, the truth is that the colonial system will win out on the planet. And that's why Marx is warning against That's what the quote-unquote communists are warning against. They're warning against, what if this capitalist system just consumes the whole planet? What if this capitalist system bucks up against the agriculturists? What if this is what it really boils down to, and what your objective is. So, whereas we might say, hey, the colonial system will not last forever, it can. Now, forever is a long time, so obviously not forever, but your lifetime, Fanon's lifetime, your lifetime, the lifetime of your children, very possibly. Particularly if you're in places where the colonial system is firmly entrenched. For instance, Marx, I like to bring up Marx, because he is a familiar philosophy. But his idea was that communism would end in England, and that was the foci, is that if you can get communism to end where it began, in a sense, not to say that it began there, but just to say, if you can get communism to end where it began, then possibly it will not become a global system. But if you cannot get it to end in the UK, it will continue to expand and grow, because because essentially, Russia, China, Cuba, they don't impact this American and English economic system, and French and whatever. But it doesn't impact, because you can't destroy an economic system. Me having a burgeoning agricultural economy, or for instance, the Yoruba have this burgeoning agricultural economy, right? That doesn't impact the Himba, that doesn't impact the Khoisan. It only impacts because they're in a different part of the world. Now, if they clash, sure, but when you clash, you have to be stronger. And in the case of the nomads versus the hunter-gatherers, yeah, the nomads are stronger. In the case of the agriculturalists and the nomads, the agriculturalists are usually stronger. In the case of the colonials and the agriculturalists, the colonials are usually stronger. It behooves you to develop a system even stronger. But that's not even your objective. And that's that's what I can say about that. So Kofi sent a message. It says message retracted though, so I didn't get to catch it. Arthur Jor quotes, "Your objective is not to destroy colonial economies. It is to not live in one." Exactly. I mean, again, the colonial economy is going to possibly clash with your economy, so you have to also live in an economy that can clash back. That's something that's, maybe I'll put some intellectual work into that, but that's your assignment. You have to derive and develop a system that can clash. Right now, you couldn't even clash with the Khoisan, well, maybe you could. All right. So the colonized, however, do not keep accounts. They register the enormous gaps left. And by the way, thanks. Appreciate Arthur Joy and Kofi for showing up. I also appreciate Machiavelli for showing up as well. The colonized, however, do not keep accounts. You said what? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, my fault. This brother, man. You. All right. So anyway, like what he's talking about is that I usually share the screen in the Discord as well. So remember, anybody could just join the Discord and, chat it up. All right. So the colonized, however, do not keep accounts. They register the enormous gaps left in their ranks as a kind of necessary evil. Since they have decided to respond with violence, they admit the consequences. Their one demand is that they are not asked to keep account for others as well. To the expression, all natives are the same, the colonized reply, all colonists are the same. When the colonized subject is tortured, when his wife is killed or raped, he complains to no one. The authorities of oppression... Oh, hold on a second. What? Oh, when the colonized subject is tortured, when his wife is killed, he plays the no-ban. The authorities of oppression can appoint as many commissioners of inquiry and investigation as they like. In the eyes of the colonized, these commissions do not exist. And in fact, because he's talking about when there's like something bad happens to an African or a colonized individual, right? They don't complain to the colonists, And of course, you see the contrast when, Trayvon Martin was, hunted, stalked, and killed. Like he was stalked and killed by this this just random individual, really. the response of the black community was to, you know, say, okay, we'll look into this, police. And the police said, okay, sure, we'll look into this. And they say, well, yeah, you know what? He was justified. And that's different. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you do not want of a colonized people. But that's the response that you got in America. Or even the same with regards to George Floyd. It was, you know, he was, like, straight up murdered in plain sight, plain view. And then people said, hey, we want some justice. We want this, you know, police, you murdered this guy. Why don't you fix this problem? They were like, oh, sure, okay. All right, we'll do something, you know? Okay, everybody around the world is, okay, we'll do something. You know? That's not what you want from a colonized people. So anyway, so this is a 600,000 strong army, almost the entire Navy and Air Force. Oh, so he's talking about he says he doesn't have a footnote here. Okay, so this is footnote 8. Oh, so this is probably from the earlier footnote. So he says the creation of these militias, they say, this is about the French militia. They will free units whose mission is to protect the borders with Tunisia and Morocco. A 600,000 strong army, almost the entire Navy and Air Force, a vast police network operating expeditiously with a staggering record since it recruited the ex-torturers of the Moroccan and Tunisian peoples. Territorial units 100,000 men strong. The job of the army must be alleviated. Let's create urban militias. So impressive is Lacoste's criminal and hysterical frenzy, it convinces even clear-sighted Frenchmen. The truth is that the justification for creating such militias is contradictory in itself. The French army's job is infinite. From the moment its mission is to gag the mouths of the Algerians, the door to the future is closed forever. Above all, there is a refusal to analyze, to understand, and to gauge the depth and density of the Algerian Revolution. Every district, every section, every street, every housing block, every floor has its community leader. Coverage on the ground is now backed up by coverage floor by floor. In 48 hours, 2,000 candidates were enrolled. The Europeans, look at that. In 2 days, 2,000 white people in France volunteered, or white people around Algeria or France volunteered to murder Algerians on sight. You know, and that's something that you have to realize. That's what I want you to point out. I want somebody to understand this too. When the George Floyd protests happened, you know, first off, I didn't think it was a good idea to protest because of the coronavirus, obviously. But when it happened, though, white people mobilized very quickly, you know, to the point where some rallies or many rallies were majority white, you know. And by majority white, I mean like 90% white. Now, obviously, there were also some black rallies and so on and so forth, but there were huge protests that white people were doing. And again, of course, it was bad timing, but I think partly why people even protested was because of how bad timing it was to murder a black person, you know, during a pandemic. But at the same time, it tells you that in the event that black people in America say to themselves, hey, you know what? Enough is enough. We've had it. We are going to march to the street. The reality is that white people, even on this issue, would march as well. And they probably will not march on your side if you're looking for black domination, in a sense. If you're looking for a continuation of white domination, however, then probably, maybe. But again, you would just get more of the same. Because again, like if you're not developing an alternative economy, then, you know, that's your loss. And even if you were to think about an economy, you know, you have to realize that one of the issues with this this dream of an alternative economy is that you're probably going to end up with somebody being an underclass, nevertheless. And yeah, you're probably going to end up at that. Just out of.
Was that a possibility?
Oh yeah. So I was thinking about this on my way here actually. Let's just be realistic. You said what?
From being late.
Yeah, exactly, right.
All right.
See, but you still working, you know. you just get your notes ready. But the thing is that like you're gonna have to treat the foreigner different from you treat your citizen. You know, you have to treat the foreigner. You said, why is that the case? Well, I mean that's just normal, you know.
What would you consider a foreigner?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you have a nation, right? you, let's say you have an, all right, let's pretend, let's give me a random nation. Give me a random nation.
Jamaica.
Okay, Jamaica, sure. All right, so you have a nation called Jamaica, right? Jamaica. You build up a nice economy in Jamaica, and there's obviously a division of labor. There's good labor and bad labor. You know, or there's physical labor and mental labor. Not to say physical labor is always bad. Not to say mental labor is always good. But just say that there's physical labor, there's bad physical labor, okay? Or even there's bad mental labor, whatever. Point is that now you have this nation called Jamaica, right? Now you get some Nigerian to come in, Nigerian refugee, right? See, I got you, right? All right, so you get some Nigerian refugee to come in, right? And they come inside. What do you give them? They're not citizens yet, right? Or they're not citizens, period. And in fact, your nation, let's say your nation is 5 generations old, okay? So it's 5 generations of Jamaicans, you know, building this nice nation to the point where people from Nigeria say, hey, I want to go over there, right? Do you give this Nigerian immigrant position over your Jamaican citizens that built up the nation, per se? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what I'm asking you, yeah.
Well, again, it depends. Is it like we're just purely talking like in a general sense, like just like a nation of today, or a nation that's built on principles of Pan-Africanism?
Well, it's built on principles of Pan-Africanism, sure, but at the same time, you know, you have citizens that, I mean, at the end of the day, if there's a position, if there's a job that is undesirable, right? Who does it? You know? Is it that the Jamaicans that you've built with and developed, and you know,
so what you're saying is the priority for the better position will be those that are actually citizens.
That are always, yeah, always. Not so much a foreigner. Not to say that the Nigerian
benefits would being a citizen, because you're paying taxes, etc.
Exactly, they paid taxes for 5 generations. The next person did it. Now here's the issue. Now, obviously, like you said, it's not so, like, it sounds worse when you, like you said, you have principles of Pan-Africanism, right? But so it sounds worse. It's like, what? Why would you reject this Nigerian? He's just as African, he's just as entitled, so on and so forth. True, right? But then you come to nations like America, you come to nations like UK, you come to nations like this, and you realize that, but you realize that they are going to look at this African, right, as that foreigner. You know what I mean?
As an African, not an American.
Exactly. As a foreigner, as the non-citizen. Now, obviously, we have the quote-unquote citizenship. We have the the quote-unquote whatever. But it becomes that if there is some sort of wretched position that you need done, you know, like let's say you have these plantations. You need somebody to work these plantations. It's probably going to be that outsider. Particularly, like, if you're talking about adults, we're talking about adult outsiders, because one of the things that you can expect if you have, like, let's say you have 5 generations in this Jamaican nation that you have, right? You have 5 generations in this Jamaican nation. What happens is that, you know, they have 5 generations of law-abiding. You know, they have 5 generations of following the education. You know, they had 5 generations of... Exactly. Now, these other people who come in, these refugees, if you will, if they're refugees, right? You don't know their credibility. They haven't paid any taxes. They haven't followed... You don't know if they're law-abiding or anything. You don't know. You don't even know these people.
You wouldn't accept them if they weren't law-abiding, the refugees.
Well, for refugees, maybe you would, you know? Like, I mean, maybe. If you're a nice person.
Pan-Africanism, right?
You said what?
Ideally, if we're talking about Pan-Africanism as being ideally, then I would assume, again, I guess this is all like hypothetical, that those Nigerian refugees are also integrating that type of ideology. Would they not?
Not apropos. I think that's the right word, but like not off the bat. I mean, it goes like this, right? If I today, I mean, like you said, we're talking about today. If I today go to, no, I'm saying if we talk about today, let's name another nation in Africa this time. Obviously, all right, Rwanda. I go down to Rwanda, right? You know, I don't expect to get as much as the Rwandan citizen. That makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
You know? Now, in this pet...
you know, like housing and all those other benefits. Yeah. That
Yeah.
Like maybe owning versus renting.
Now, look, real talk, if you go down to any African nation right now, real talk, you cannot even work. You know?
Got a visa.
Yeah, you gotta have a work visa, or you gotta pay big money.
Yeah.
In order to even have the right to, you know, bag groceries, like, because again, it's for their citizens. Yeah, you can't even open up a business unless you pay for that. You have to pay for a business license. You have to. I mean, that makes sense though, because the thing is this: that in America, you also exactly in America, you have to apply for a worker's license. You can't just go out and work. You have to apply for a license, and we forgot about it because we were so young. But that's what you do. Now, if you're not a citizen, you can't just apply for that American license. You have to pay for it.
There's a lot of other balances you have to go.
Exactly. But that's so as to say that now so that's why America, what it does is that it takes in immigrants illegally and pays them under the table. That's what Americans do because but that's what you'd expect, you know, because what are they doing? What are these these immigrants doing? They're doing like crap physical labor, like farming or
dishwashing.
Yeah, dishwashing and what's the thing? The garden work or something like that. They do that stuff. I mean, like garden, like home repair. But anyway, yeah. Like he just went right back to doing sharecropping. And yeah, landscaping. There you go. But they do is that. they do that stuff, but that's what you'd expect because. But then you ask yourself, well, if you have this developed economy, right, and these jobs still need to be done, right? Who are you going to get to do those things? And this is where you better understand why Wazungu does what Wazungu does. You know, why Wazungu subjugates these African people because. If we're now doing all the crap labor, we're doing all that customer service crap while they can do, you know, bigger things and better things, then that allows them to do it. If they don't, because the thing is that if nobody else is willing to do these crap stuff, right? Not to say that they're crappy. I mean, it's a job's a job, right? But if nobody else is doing that stuff, then they have to do it, and they have to find their own people to do it. And if they think too highly of themselves to do it, then, you know.
What was the idea that they are, I mean, because you're already insinuating they're crappy jobs. Having that idea that they are, where does that come from?
What is that? Where's the idea of what come from? No, look, jobs in general, white people in general don't want to work, you know? Like, I mean, generally speaking, you don't want to, you know? Not 8 hours a day, because, you know, 5 days a week. That's
nobody want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like generally speaking.
Like in Europe, they even do like 3 or 4 days a week.
Exactly. You know, but like even that, you know, going out in the landscaping different yards, like they don't want to do their own landscaping. You know, they don't want to. You know. Yeah, for little plots of land, they got like they don't want to do their own hedging. Like if somebody else could do it, you would rather somebody else do it. Like they would rather sit back and do, if anything, do something. Like if it's not something meaningful, like, you know, doctor stuff, then just like relax. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just relax. Like nobody wants to be that. Cause like it's like do you want to work to live or live to work? You know?
How to Eat to Live by Elijah Muhammad. Go ahead.
Nah, pause, man. But anyway, anyway, but huh? Yeah. So I think that's the issue at hand. That realistically speaking, yeah, you know, you're going to. Now, I'm not saying that it's crap jobs, but I understand that.
He said it several times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that because,
Compared to maybe like air conditioned office job, sure, maybe.
no, I mean, like even that, it's like white people would rather, like you said, like you would rather be the manager of that office. You know, that's a good job.
Yeah, but I'm saying like
You know?
yeah, picking being outside in 95-degree humid weather with bugs and animals and XYZ.
Yeah. No, they don't like that.
Air conditioned.
Yeah,
Cubicle.
but even then, it's like like there's degrees to it, you know. So there, even that office job isn't all that sweet.
We're doing specifically the opposite, and yeah, there are levels. Like, do you want to be just a worker?
Exactly. Do you want to be the manager? Do you want to be the CEO? Like the CEO is like going on yachts and having
Business trips.
yeah, drug whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's what white people
Okay,
want.
that's the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, the Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, that's the ideal, man. That's what they want, man. Like,
I
look,
love that movie.
they made a movie about it. So a bit of medicine says, "Peace, fam. In an African nation, foreigners would be. Why can't all be treated equal?" Okay, so yeah, foreigners. So that's what I'm saying. Like a foreigner would be basically a non-citizen. So you'd set up a nation, and you would like essentially. So that's what Pan-Africanism is really about. You know, it's like you want that nation to have that leadership that is open to outsiders and open to other people, and treats particularly children with a good future. But at the same time, you have to realize that you as a individual have to bring value to that other nation, and you have to prove yourself. If there was a Pan-African nation already set up, and then I showed up at the border, they already have it set up. I fully wouldn't understand if they said, Oni, you got to do X, Y, Z. And this is the thing that, realistically speaking, happened throughout Africa, where you would visit another nation, right? A nation would destroy your nation, matter of fact, right? So they would take your land, and then they would say, hey, you have to work for us for a number of years, like let's say 7 years, so on and so forth. Now we technically call that slave. You have to work for 7 years, and then maybe then suddenly you could be a full citizen. You'll have full citizenship rights, right? We call that slavery. You understand? So we look back and we say, yeah, Africans used to enslave each other because they're prisoners of war. You just destroyed their land, you took all their land, and now so on and so forth. That is like, yeah, you would technically call it slavery because there were no wages, but of course there were never any wages during this period anyway. So it would be whatever. But the reality is that that's how it is. You have an African nation. Let's say you're like you said, like you're Rwanda, whatever, right? Or you're Jamaica. Jamaica then suddenly takes over Haiti, right? I'm glad you said Jamaica, brother. Right? Jamaica suddenly takes over Haiti, right? That's another. How many people in Haiti again? Maybe like I want to say I can't remember. Maybe
I don't know about that. I don't know if you can do that in Haiti.
10 million.
They're warriors.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the point is that, yeah, so it's 10 million people. You have 10 million new people, and you're bringing them into your African administration. You're bringing them into your sphere of influence. And
You gotta work on the language barrier.
okay, sir. Right. Well, the point, like, in the future, with all the technology going on.
What, Kiswahili now?
No, and all the technology going on, you just auto translate that. Just what'd you say?
Translate on you.
Yeah, man. Like, you don't think so? Sure, you can walk around with the phone all the time. You can do that now. You can even do that now if you wanted to. Just like, in fact, yeah, I think I saw somebody do that. I can't remember, but they was like, somebody was talking, and then they held like their Google Translate button or whatever, and then Google Translate said what they said. Like, yeah, that's a thing right now. It's not even like future. It's just like right now. But yeah. So, but basically, you take over this land or whatever, and then you have to put it in. You have to send people from Jamaica now, because you have this Jamaica whatever, to be the people that reorganize Haiti, right? And when they reorganize Haiti, the people that came from Jamaica, the generations that came from Jamaica, will have a higher and better position than the people in Haiti that they just won the war against. And that's how it always is. That's what makes sense. The people that win the war are now administering the people that lose the war if they choose to take their land. And that's what we've always seen. Now, we, in, you know, like when you read ancient African history, not ancient African history, when you read classical African history, you say, oh, that's slavery. No, it's not slavery. That's just what it is. That if you take over another land, then you, and if you choose to administer it, then you administer it. If you choose to get reparations, then you just get reparations. But all the while, the people that were dominated, the people that were taken over, are going to be treated as not less than, but treated differently from the people who dominated. You know, and that right there means, you know, that's what I'm telling you, that, you know, when you develop an economic system, you're probably going to develop an economic system that has a class bias. If you don't, if instead you say, hey, you know what, you know, Jamaica takes over Haiti, right? So now that it did that, we just open it up for democracy. What's the next step? And then let's say Haiti's 10 million people, Jamaica's 2 million people. Then the Haitians just say, I mean, probably wouldn't be 10 million if they lost a war, but still, you know, if they do, whatever. Point is that, let's say the ratio is still, you know, 5 to 1 in Haiti. Haiti just says, okay, sure. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that we're going to vote. And the vote is that Jamaica hands all its wealth over to Haiti. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying?
I see.
Like, it doesn't make no sense.
In comparison, to say, well, the UK, Britain is small.
Yeah.
What they control were millions, hundreds of millions.
Exactly.
Essentially. So,
yeah, they set up the administration. So when they went to other countries that, like, if they beat the Akan, they set up the administration for the Akan. They didn't open it up so that and then if somebody were to do the lower labor, if you will, versus the upper labor, it wasn't the British weren't going to go all the way to Africa or you know, to do lower labor, or they weren't going to invite Africans over to Britain to do higher labor, you know, unless they really were exceptional, you know, like they were exceptional. But usually you would have a bias towards your own people or towards your own nation, you know, even if it's the same people. It would be towards your own nation. So, but again, that's just the clear cut. Now, technically, what Marxism does, what the idea of communism that people don't really understand, is that there would be no lower labor, in a sense, that it would be eliminated by machines. You know, so it's like a sci-fi kind of nonsensical idea, but it's like you know, basically like I was saying the other day.
And I asked, what would then the most of the population be doing?
No, they'll be doing things that machines can't do. That would be the idea. Shit.
What are a population of 100 million going to do if most of the jobs they do are going to be taken over by machines?
Well, that's the thing, though. The thing is that the fiction is that the machines are going to take over most of the jobs. Now, but if they were to, the idea is that...
I understand, but I'm saying, what would then the population do?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The idea is that the population doesn't need to do anything because the machines are doing everything for them. So they could
live a life of leisure, essentially.
They could live a life of leisure. Just like you know, if Africans did all the work, what would Europeans be doing? They'll be, you know, playing video games or something. You know what I mean? Playing video games, jumping from buildings, you know, you know, climbing up mountains, you know, just living a life, you know. Like that's what
Where the progress come from?
Wolves of Wall Street.
What type of progress?
Well, the idea for communism is, in a sense, is that
What, they live a life of Wolf of Wall Street?
exactly, you know, just motorboating or whatever. Anyway, no pun intended. All right. Anyway, but yeah. So, like, where's the progress? What progress do you need? You have all your needs met. Like, what more progress do you need? That's the idea. The idea is that that is the end stage. The end goal is for machinery, so on and so forth. But that's obviously, you know, ridiculous. It's obviously ridiculous.
Well, I wonder then, what type of economic system can be put in place that, of course, you can't get 100% buy-in, but you can get a good majority supporting the system and are satisfied with the outcomes of what is in place.
Yeah, that's the question that I'm that I think everybody should wrestle with. I mean, I couldn't.
Okay.
I don't think we could get it in the limited amount of time we have.
Sure.
But yes, it's one of those questions. So hopefully people at home are thinking about it. You know, the three of us, right?
You say like you got a hotties or hundreds.
I know, right? All three of us, because I think about it. You know what I mean? Like the people at home, oh, we gonna solve this tomorrow. Nope. Anyway, all right. So in 48 hours, 2,000 candidates were enrolled. The Europeans of Algeria immediately responded to Lacosse's call for murder. From now on, every European will have to make a list of the surviving Algerians in his sector. Dang. They make a list. That's what I'm saying. Like you could, and this is what I'm saying. Like you living with these white folk right now, right? Anytime Europe says, you know what? Make a list of all the Algerians that are surviving, all the Africans that are surviving, right? They will. You understand? When Christopher Dorner did what he did, America called for volunteers to find him, and white folk signed up. Random white folk, not just police. Random white folk signed up. You have to understand that this is real. You think you're safe. You think, your neighbor is nice, she smiled at you or whatever. She when you needed some salt, she was like, hey, I have some salt, or when the toilet.
Borrow salt.
It ain't borrowing, man. You taking, right? Anyway. But, are you going to give it back? Can I, you in the Boondocks, right? Can I ever borrow a fry? How you going to borrow a fry? Are you gonna give it back? No. So what was it? No. All right. So like when the toilet paper thing was rare, she might have said, "Oh, I have some more rolls. Do you have any rolls? Whatever." Right? She's gone. If any time.
She helped you wipe your ass.
No, I don't got a neighbor like that. Real talk. But anyway, but like at any point that Joe Biden says, all right, let's get these Negroes. You gone.
Joe Biden.
That's how they make fun of Kamala for saying it like that.
Hey, I've never heard that.
Oh, all right, whatever. I think I watched SNL. I started watching it. I don't know. They were basing it off of whatever. All right, let me stop. All right, so anyway, I'm live. All right, so gathered intelligence. From now on, every European will have to make a list of surviving Algerians. So they make a list. Gathering intelligence, rapid response to terrorism, identifying suspects, okay, climination of runaways, and elimination. I was like, what the frick is climination? All right, elimination of runaways. When they see you running, they gunning. And police reinforcements. Yes, the army must be alleviated of such jobs. Combing the ground is now backed up by combing floor by floor. Haphazard killings are now backed up by premeditated murder. Stop the bloodshed, urged the UN. The best way of doing so, retorts Lacoste, is to have no more blood to shed. So the UN is like, hey, stop killing people in Algeria. And the French are like, oh, okay, that means just kill off everybody. Let's just finish the job. That's what they are doing. That's their mindset. You have to understand because you see, you want to understand what they've done in the past and understand what they're capable of in the future. Okay? What they're capable of, because you're thinking, hey, they're not capable of this. They wouldn't do this. And they've already done it. But you don't know about it. After having been delivered up to Massou's hordes, the Algerian people are now entrusted to the care of the urban militias. Lacosse's decision to create these militias clearly means hands off his war. It is proof there are no limits once the riot is set in. Of course, now he is a prisoner, but what a delight to drag down everyone with him. After every one of his decisions, the Algerian people increase their muscular tension, intensify their struggle. After every one of these organized requisition killings, the Algerian people better structure their consciousness and strengthen their resistance. Yes, the tasks for the French army are infinite because the unity of the Algerian people is infinite. Oh, so infinite. So, yeah. And this is the 8th footnote. He says, this is the reason why at the outbreaks of hostility, no prisoners are taken. It is only through politicizing the cadres that the leaders manage to get the masses to accept that the recruits dispatched from the metropole are not always sent on their free will, and in some cases even are sickened by this war. That is the current interest of the movement to wage a struggle abiding by certain international conventions. That an army which takes prisoners is an army and ceases to be considered a gang of outlaws. In any case, the possession of prisoners constitutes a significant means of applying pressure for protecting our militants held by the enemy. So I guess he's talking about something with prisons. He says, all colonists are the same, as to say that they do not take prisoners. Yeah. When the colonist subject is tortured, hold on a second, let me cover up this, hold on a second, sorry. I just realized. 2 seconds. All right, I'm back. He says the authorities of oppression can appoint in many commissions of inquiry, investigations they like. In the eyes of the colonized, these commissions do not exist. And in fact, soon it will be 7 years of crimes committed in Algeria. Not a single Frenchman has been brought before a French court of justice for the murder of an Algerian. You know, this is something that you want to realize too. Apparently in American history, long American history, all these black women getting raped by white men, I think it was like only 2 white men were ever prosecuted. Maybe like 5 were ever brought before the court or something like that. It's a real.
For that, what was the case for
Recy Taylor?
Interracial.
Oh
Sorry?
no, I thought you meant Recy Taylor. Never mind.
It was for marriage, interracial marriage.
Oh, loving.
Yeah, even that one you could say that was rape because that relationship started when that girl was 14.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I learned that recently. I think she was like 12 or 14. She was young, so it wasn't necessarily like they were in love. Like, dude groomed her.
Yeah.
White dude groomed her.
Yeah. That's that's gross. But like you know, like white people had that because like the dude was telling me that. I mean, Ultimatus would tell us that when he was younger, he'd look out like he would see this white guy show up to his neighbor's house, tell the man to get out, and then he would leave like a few hours later or whatever, and then the man would walk back in. And the whole thing about this was that this white guy, times were such that a white guy could just come up to your door, say he's gonna sleep with your wife, and you would leave the house to let him.
Nah.
Yeah, okay. You say nah, but this is the control that white people had in the South. Nah, this was the South. This was like before the Civil Rights Movement. Definitely. Look, they were lynching black people, man. This is not a huh?
I mean, it happened in my hometown a lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not a joke. Like they control people. They control people with the use of force to the point where they can do anything. Because even the sister was writing in like 1900. She was saying that she was like a maid or something, right? So I actually put this story in my book. For those of y'all who don't know, Book of Power. Shout out to the Book of Power. All right, so right now. All right. Anyway, so in the Book of Power, I usually put like a bunch of named people, but eventually I put down this nurse who didn't put her name in, and she was talking about the situation that she observed, you know, growing up in the 1900s or working in the 1900s, right? Or the early 1900s or the late 1800s or whatever. And she said that there was this one occasion where, actually when she was a nurse, she was working at some job. And then as a housemaid, right? And the house servant, the people from Africa could understand what I'm talking about now here too. So the house servants in Africa or in America, same thing. What happens is that the person that's hiring them, right, the man of that house, would try to sexually solicit them. You know, would kiss them, so on and so forth. And so,
I mean, it could happen.
It could happen.
That's like that just happened. Like as a house girl, that's gonna happen. Like no. All
right, well, maybe not in Africa, but that's how it was in America, right? And I mean, I think it is so in Africa, but
yes, but like, it's not like something that's like it's a guarantee that's gonna happen. Like no,
I don't know, but maybe not today, but again, like there are situations, right, where that like a lot of guys, in fact, would admit, a lot of guys I've heard in Africa admit they lost their virginity to the house help, you know. But nonetheless, you know, on the African side,
that's different than like the man in the house soliciting sex from her. That's different.
Okay, you sounding weird now. you sound a little suspect now. You know, well, I mean that's fair game. I mean,
Can I finish my point? Are you looking back? Right.
I want to keep laughing. Can I? You didn't even let me answer. Like what?
You're not. If you were listening, you understand what I was saying. I'm saying you're saying those guys lost their virginity to her. That means they were underage.
Maybe. I don't know if they're underage necessarily, but maybe.
If they're talking about I mean, okay, most dudes lose their virginity when they're teenagers. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. What about it?
So then, I'm saying if they lost their virginity to her, then more than likely she was older than them. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Maybe, possibly. But again, like one of the reasons is that the father and them.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, one of the reasons that the father and them can have like this authority over her. Other way around what?
As in, if she's older than them. That's what I'm saying.
No, I feel you. I feel you.
Lost their virginity, so that's what I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. But like,
You're saying, I guess you're trying to say that she raped them.
Yeah, and like a babysitter. I saw you have babysitters, and like sometimes some young boys, their babysitter was their first experience because she was doing things to them when they were kids. That's what I'm saying.
Nah, yeah, these guys, yeah, maybe possibly, but again, the dynamic here is more so that this woman, or if it's a woman, if the housemaid's a woman, she has.
Girl, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's a woman. It's a house girl. Yeah.
Well, I said maid, yeah, but the point is that the larger point.
Sure maids are women. But go ahead.
All right, don't be sexist. All right.
I'll do that gender neutral. Here we go.
There are male maids. I don't know why, but there are. All right. If you down bad, why not? But anyway, but the thing is this, that it's about it's just like a power relationship. So to the point where, if you need to have it's kind of like the child is still the employer, or you cannot cross the child because there are real physical consequences if you do. There are real economic consequences if you do. In some respects, it is complicated because by our Western sensibility, we would say, like by our Western sensibility, it doesn't make much sense, or the way how we look at it is, well, she's a babysitter, she's the teacher, she's so on and so forth. But in the position where it is, like the father comes along and says, I want my son to lose his virginity, whatever, right? It behooves us to be like, oh, she's a rapist, Well, we understand that, like we understand that, like, yes, in the West we would say, like if it was just a random woman, if it was a random babysitter, sure. In these situations, the father is abusing this woman. The woman is like
if you're talking about the father doing to the woman, I'll give you that, sure.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna finish that sentence. usually it's like a setup. But anyway, yeah. But I mean, like, so anyway, here's what happens inside of here's what happened in America though. So
saying like that, like the son, like that boy, getting having relations with the house girl, the babysitter, essentially. I don't see how that even works because even still, I'm
well, if you can't refuse something, that's the problem. The problem is whether you could refuse something.
No, I can't agree with that. Okay. If she is like a babysitter, that kind of figure.
She's not a babysitter. She's a servant. She's a slave.
Okay, but
you understand?
I'm trying to tell you. The idea is that if she is older than them, then she's already an elder to that boy or to that child.
Bruh, you're mistaking class. You're overlooking the class difference and the power differential. If you're enslaved, it's like this. Imagine you're on a plantation in America, right? And in fact, you have, what's the name for that? What's the name for the Mammy? I think Mammy or Aunt Jemima, whatever, right? Some bigger, older enslaved African, right? The father, the grandfather, everybody abused this woman as she got older. Now she's older still. And now little Johnny, 14 years old, wants to mess with her, right? You're saying if little Johnny says, okay, come here.
I know we're talking here in the U.S. I'm not basing it on the U.S. necessarily. I'm talking
no, I mean, but understand that situation. For that situation, you're saying that if little Johnny says he wants some of this Aunt Jemima or whatever, right, that Aunt Jemima is now a rapist. You understand?
Not her rapist.
You said what?
No, repeat that. I want to
You said Aunt Jemima is the rapist here because she's older than Johnny.
Yes, because she could say no.
You think Aunt Jemima could say no to Johnny?
On the continent, yes, absolutely.
On the continent?
Because,
okay, yeah.
Yes, because she's
Yeah.
That's why she's older than, so you have to have
You would think so. There's this sister. This sister told me.
That's what it is.
Look, there's this sister. There's this sister who told me.
It's regarded for elders that are older than you.
I understand you. I understand what you're saying, but there's a sister. This sister who told me. Listen to me. Listen to me. This sister told me that some lady, some kid, accused his maid or whatever of touching him when he was younger, right? And so they beat her ass, right? The question is this though: you don't know if the kid was telling the truth.
Sure.
Okay. What it tells you, however, is that they have this autonomy over this other individual to the point where they like beat her like bad, like almost killed her, whatever, maybe possibly killed her. I don't know. But the point is that with that kind of control, right? That kind of thing, a kid can lie, or a kid could blackmail.
But that has nothing to do with class.
If a kid blackmail, well, the class thing, yeah, the class thing right there, the class thing. Well, all right, the class again. No. Look, because the reality is this: that if somebody were to accuse me, right, they would try to get the facts.
No, I disagree with that. No.
Yeah, they would try to. Yeah, me, yeah, definitely. No. Or even more importantly, if somebody, more importantly, look. Hold on a second. More importantly, if someone accused a white person, more importantly, if somebody accused a white person, they would definitely get the facts. You understand? Even if you don't think that they would get the facts from me.
I can give you that.
What the fuck? You think they they be like, oh, they probably. This does the but I mean, this white boy, maybe. I mean, we have to look into it. Yeah.
You know how people have this mentality wise, that inferiority. That's what I'm saying. Sure.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I would think that I pass it, but whatever. All right, whatever, my dude. Whatever. I would think that I'll pass, but whatever. Never mind. All right, let's go. But yeah, that's the point. The point is that that's the larger. It's a larger conversation, but the point being.
Even in the comments, it's just us. But
you said what?
It's just us arguing back and forth. Nobody even listening.
No, people are listening. They're just not commenting. Yeah. But the thing, because it's an interesting conversation. The point is that but that's where the class comes in, where it's like with this lady, it's just like without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, you probably did it, and we're gonna kick your ass, because she's like nothing. But like if a white guy does it, it's like, well, are you sure? Well, like they're not gonna be beating no white guy's ass, believe me. You understand? Anyway, please, man.
As subjugated as our mentality is,
that's what class is, though. Class is that. That's what class is. When you're looking at white folk, like, yeah, I wouldn't even like. I had to be 100% sure, and even then, I'll probably let them handle it. That's class. That's the big difference. When you say this woman, she like my kid just sneezed, just looked at her funny, then yeah. Anyway, the authorities of oppression can appoint as many commissioners of inquiry and investigation as they like. Oh, I think I read that part. In the eyes of the colonized, these commissions do not exist, and in fact, soon it will be 7 years of crimes. Oh, yeah, so yes, that's what I was saying about the black women. In Indochina, Madagascar, and the colonies, the native has always known he can expect nothing from the other side. The work of the colonists is to make even dreams of liberty impossible for the colonized. The work of the colonized is to imagine every possible method for annihilating the colonists. On the logical plane, the Manichaeism of the colonists produces the Manichaeism of the colonized. The theory of the absolute evil of the colonists is the response to the theory of the absolute evil of the native. So again, he's saying you have to formulate this idea that the colonist is, in fact, absolutely evil. The arrival of the colonists, and which is, of course, like I say, I want to say, I'm going to say this almost every episode. Fanon is sleeping with a white woman. Like you can't be, oh yeah, the colonists is so evil, and then you sleeping with them. It don't make much sense. But anyway, the arrival of the colonists signified.
To some people, you can be pro-black, air quotes, and have a whole discussion.
Oh yeah, you talking about Tariq Nasheed, right? No, I'm joking.
I'm just joking. I'm talking about a whole bunch of.
Nah, I was just messing. I was just shading him. All right, the arrival of the colonists signifies syncretically the death of indigenous society, cultural lethargy, and petrification of the individual. For the colonized, life can only materialize from the rotting cadaver of the colonists. Such then is a term-for-term correspondence between the two arguments. But if so happens that for the colonized, this violence is invested with positive, formative features because it constitutes their only work. This violent praxis is totalizing, since each individual represents a violent link in the great chain, in the almighty body of violence rearing up in reaction to the primary violence of the colonizer. Factions recognize each other, and the future nation is already indivisible. The armed struggle mobilizes the people, i.e., it pitches them in a single direction from which there is no turning back. When it is achieved during a war of liberation, the mobilization of the masses introduces the notion of common cause, national destiny, and collective history into every consciousness. Consequently, the second phase, i.e. nation building, is facilitated by the existence of this mortar kneaded with blood and rage. This then gives us a better understanding of the originality of the vocabulary used in undeveloped countries. During the colonial period, the people were called upon to fight against oppression. Following national liberation, they are urged to fight against poverty, illiteracy, and underdevelopment. The struggle, they say, goes on. The people realize that life is an unending struggle. The violence of the colonized, we have said, unifies the people, but its very structure, colonialism, is separatist and regionalist. Colonialism is not merely content to note the existence of tribes. It reinforces and differentiates them. The colonial system nurtures the chieftainships and revives the old marabout confraternities. Violence in its practice is totalizing and national. As a result, it harbors in its depths the elimination of regionalism and tribalism. The nationalist parties, therefore, show no pity at all towards the Qaids and the traditional chiefs. The elimination of the Qaids or the chiefs is a prerequisite to the unification of the people. So this is actually pretty interesting. He's saying here that the colonial administration exacerbated the tribal rivalries and, you know, empowered the chiefs, you know, because, you know, if you understand, you want people to, you want the chiefs to cooperate with the nation at hand, you know. I want to think about this. I want you guys to think about this movie. I mean, you don't have to think about this movie, but there's this movie, famous movie, Disney, Mulan. Okay, so if you understand what was going on in Mulan, or why it was even a movie, basically there's this emperor in China, right? He wants to fight Genghis Khan. Okay, Genghis Khan is, you know, rampaging in the north of China. China has to put up a defense. So what China has.
Genghis with a hard G.
Oh, it's Genghis, not Genghis. I think it's Genghis, man.
So it's Genghis Khan.
Nah, I think the correct pronunciation is Genghis, but it looks like Genghis Khan. But I mean, you can always look it up, I guess. But I think that's why I'm saying it.
It's like, you know, ghetto, GH.
Bruh,
GPH.
it's a Chinese word. It's not an English word. Right? All right, let me. Hey, look, you might be right. You might be right. I don't know, but I don't think it's that serious. But let me see. I guess we'll just look it up. It's been a long time since I've used this word. Yeah, I can't even see. Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. Yeah, it's just a title. All right. Anyway, point is, this guy. All right. What is it? Is it J or G? You putting up a machine? You think machines could? Anyway, this guy. All right. Whatever.
It tells you the American pronunciation is built in.
Yeah, but the American. Yeah, the Americans say it wrong. That's the whole point. It's like Sunjata versus Sundiata. You know, the Americans say it wrong. You know, it's just a thing. All right, or like Cuba instead of Cuba. You know, it's like, yeah, American definition. The Americans tell you Cuba, but it's Cuba. Anyway, point is that in Mulan, Chinese emperor is trying to go against this.
The Chinese pronunciation is totally different.
What is it?
Hey, hold on.
The devil.
Listen. It's Xiaoyinjing's Gohan. Like, he's not even close.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Genghis Khan. No, Xing Xiong Kong. Yeah, all right. Anyway, but I'll try to learn it for another time. You know, that'd be mad funny of me saying it's Chinese. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, yeah. Anyway, point is that what are we talking about? Oh yeah, so in order to fight them, you said. You know I didn't say that. You damn, damn snitch. You know what I'm saying? You damn lion snitch. You know what I'm saying? Asian shit. All right. But anyway, but you shouted out this guy. No, I didn't. What did you? Anyway, what happened was that inside of this movie, they got this family. Like they said, they told every family to send in a boy to the military. Okay? They said every family send in a boy to the army, and what happened was this gentleman, like Mulan's father, didn't have any sons, so he himself in his old age was gonna go. So instead, Mulan, you know, took his stuff and went herself, you know, to save him or whatever. The point is though that you know, the chief would oversee that every family does what is required of them from the national government. And so that's why when the colonials come in, the colonials would work with the chiefs to make sure that the chief, so they give the chief more authority, more power, more weaponry to keep the locals, their people in check, and their people rewarded, or their people whatever, but their people in check, and following with the national order. And they would make these chiefs strong. And these chiefs were often the people that could replace, you know, could like we're next in line for the like we're right under the colonial system. Now, here's the thing: when you take over the nation and you're controlled by this violence and you're this non-tribalism entity, the question becomes, well, now that this European is gone, right? What do you do with these chiefs, right? Do you continue this like how do you break away from the older economy? You know, do you keep the chiefs that were strong in the colonial system, right? Or were they part of the problem? You know, and then what do you do? And so what he's saying is that a lot of times when the Africans came to unify the people and unify us in a way such that we would no longer be fighting amongst ourselves, they went against the traditional chiefs. So he says they show no pity at all towards the Kais and the traditional chiefs, and the elimination of the Kais and the chiefs is a prerequisite to the unification of the people. You know, so that's a pretty interesting point. At the individual level, violence is a cleansing force. It rids the colonized of their inferiority complex, of their passive and despairing attitude. It emboldens them and yeah, I'm laughing about that Genghis Khan pronunciation. I think it was wild. All right. At the individual level, violence is a cleansing force. It rids the colonized of their inferiority complex. What? Anyway, at the individual, yeah. So white people just said, all right, whatever, Genghis, no, Genghis or whatever. Anyway, Jahinkas gold. Anyway, at the individual level, violence is a cleansing force. It rids the colonized of their inferiority complex, of their passive and despairing attitude. It emboldens them and restores their self-confidence. Even if the armed struggle has been symbolic, and even if they have been demobilized by rapid decolonization, the people have time to realize that liberation was the achievement of each and every one, and no special merit should go to the leader. So this is actually a problem too. They're saying the leader doesn't get the credit for the demobilization because all of them took part. You know, violence hoists the people up to the level of the leader. Hence their aggressive tendency to distrust the system of protocol that young governments are quick to establish. So again, you have this young government. You just came in after everybody was fighting, right? Everybody was fighting, you know, on equal terms. You know, Oni's in the front line, Machiavelli's in the front line, you know, Rihanna's in the front line, right? Riri, right? They're all in the front line shooting whatever, and then you said what?
Bad gal.
Bad gal. You understand? Anyway, they see, at least I can pronounce that one right. Bad gal. You understand? Anyway, so we're all in the struggle, and then at the end, Machiavelli says, okay, so now time to structure and organize and you know, everybody follow my lead. And
The whole country, everything from economics, politics.
yeah, and Riri looking at me. I'm looking at Riri like, whose man is this? You understand? That's what it was. You know, like a crew just shows up. Yeah, okay, everybody follow me.
She
And,
gonna look at both of them. I'm a billionaire. What are you guys gonna do?
well, I was just saying you're gonna look at me because, you know, I just, you know,
What you want to do?
it's Riri. You know what I'm saying? Like shit. All right. No, I'll do. What do you say?
We can build our whole nation.
Shit. Adam and Eve, man. All right. Anyway, you know, she my age, but she like worth $1 billion more. Over $1 billion. I said me and her are the same age, but you know, she worth quite a bit more.
What?
You know, $1 billion more, $1 billion times more.
She worth like 999,000 more than you.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? When they let's see, so violence hoists the people up to the level of the leader, hence their aggressive tendency quick to establish. When they have used violence to achieve national liberation, the masses allow nobody to come forward as liberator. They prove themselves to be jealous of their achievement and take care not to place their future, their destiny, and the fate of their homeland into the hands of a living God. Totally irresponsible yesterday. Today they are bent on understanding everything and determining everything. Enlightened by violence, the people's consciousness rebels against any pacification. The demagogues, the opportunists, and the magicians now have a difficult task. The praxis which pitched them into a desperate man-to-man struggle have given the masses a ravenous taste for the tangible. Any attempt at mystification in the long term becomes virtually impossible. And of course, that's a problem. You want to set your arms aside in a sense. I mean, you could stay armed, obviously, but I understand why. Now, one of the reasons why the neo-colonialist, in a sense, doesn't want you to stay armed is because, you know, that's how, like, when you're unarmed, that's how people can control you. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that everybody wants to control you when you're unarmed, but that is, like, force, like, at the end of the day, if, like imagine if the police had, you know, like, went around the world, like, went around enforcing laws through fisticuff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it'll be a pretty lawless town. You know what I mean? Because we're not really scared of police doing fisticuff. You know what I mean? Like, you could easily organize around that. So you have to, if the law enforcement, in a sense, isn't more able than the citizenry, then it's possible the citizenry could run amok. You know, it's not necessarily the case that they will necessarily do so, but you know, it's a possibility. On violence in the international context, we have many times indicated in the preceding pages that in undeveloped countries, the political leader is constantly calling on the people to fight. How's that Jollof, man? Calling on the people to fight. By the way, I actually had some Jollof yesterday, and Suya. That thing burned me. Anyway, we have many times indicated in the preceding pages that in undeveloped... What do you say? Hey. We have many times indicated in the preceding pages that in undeveloped countries, the political leader is constantly calling on the people to fight. The fight against colonialism, the fight against poverty and underdevelopment, the fight against debilitating traditions. The vocabulary he uses is that of a chief of staff, mobilization of the masses, the agricultural front, the illiteracy front, defeats suffered, victories won. During its early years, a young independent nation evolves in the atmosphere of a battleground. This is because the political leader of an undeveloped country is terror-stricken at the prospect of the long road that lies ahead. He appeals to the people and tells them, let us roll up our sleeves and get to work. Gripped in a kind of creative frenzy, the nation plunges into action of a highly disproportionate nature. The agenda is not only to pull through, but to catch up with the other nations as best one can. There is a widespread belief that the European nations have reached their present stage of development as a result of their labor. Let us prove, therefore, to the world and ourselves that we are capable of the same achievement. Posing the problem of development of underdeveloped countries in the way seems to us to be neither right nor reasonable. So let's hopefully he's going to explain that. He says the European nations achieved their national unity at a time when the national bourgeoisie had concentrated most of their wealth in their own hands. Shopkeepers and merchants, clerks and bankers monopolized finance, commerce, and science within the national framework. The bourgeoisie represented the most dynamic and prosperous class. Its rise to power enabled it to launch its operation of a crucial nature such as industrialization, the development of communications, and even, eventually, the quest of overseas outlets. So, what he's saying, and this is pretty interesting. He's basically saying why capitalism achieved, and he's making it as a critique. He's saying that the European, basically, we recognize that the European nations did develop themselves from the result of their labor. That's what we believe, right? And he's saying no, not necessarily the case. How that happened, he's saying, is that the bourgeoisie collected massive amounts of wealth, and with that massive amount of wealth, they were able to launch huge operations such as industrialization, such as the development of communications, and such as the quest to overseas outlets. You know, without that wealthy class. So he's saying basically it's not the proletariat, not the workers, not the masses that developed Europe, but in fact the bourgeoisie. You know, like if you're talking about who put up the satellites in the sky, it wasn't, you know, the peasants. You know, it was the bourgeoisie. And that's, you know, everybody knows that, true. But he's making it as a critique. So in Europe, barring a few exceptions, England, for instance, has taken a slight lead. States achieving national unity were in roughly the same economic situation. Because of the nature of their development and progress, no nation really insulted the others. Okay, I don't know what insulted is supposed to mean, but okay. He has it in italics too, like, which is to know. Well, it might be the bad translation. Today, national independence and nation building in the undeveloped regions takes on an entirely new aspect. In these regions, except for some remarkable achievement, every country suffers from the same lack of infrastructure. And of course, you know, you're not going to have a good infrastructure because no one else built the infrastructure of Europe. You understand? Europe had to build the infrastructure of Europe. You know, we didn't build their factories. We didn't build their satellites, whatever. I mean, if we built them only insofar as it was physical labor, but no foreigner came into England and said, hey, you know what? We're going to set up some good infrastructure so that you guys could thrive into the future. No one did that. They had to do it themselves. And so, you know, saying, hey, we have a lack of infrastructure. Yeah, of course. You're going to have a lack of infrastructure. Just the same way as I don't have a hot spring in my backyard, you know? I don't have my hot spring in the middle of my house. I don't have a hot spring there because I never set it up. No one's gonna put a hot spring in my house and be like, you know, happy birthday, you know? Anyway, so the masses battle with the same poverty, wrestle with the same age-old gestures, and delineate what we could call the geography of hunger with their shrunken bellies. Wait, what? The masses battle with the same poverty, wrestle with the same age-old gestures, and delineate with what we call the geography of hunger with their shrunken bellies. A world of underdevelopment, a world of poverty and inhumanity, but also a world without doctors, without engineers, without administrators. Facing this world, the European nations wallow in the most ostentatious opulence. This European opulence is literally a scandal, for it was built on the backs of slaves. It fed on the blood of slaves and owes its very existence to the soil and subsoil of the underdeveloped world. Europe's well-being and progress were built with the sweat and corpses of blacks, Arabs, Indians, and Asians. This we are determined never to forget. So again, you know, the white people are enjoying their opulence, they're enjoying their thing, and, you know, well, all we can say is, well, you guys got it from us. You guys got it off our backs. And, like, yeah, white people are like, sure. You know, again, like, they weren't going to do that work themselves. You know, you have to remember how white people live, you know? Or actually, I think it was, so John R. Bruce has this, he quoted this other person. No, he quoted this guy, I can't remember his name on top of my head right now, but there's this particular white boy that describes the feudal economy perfectly. And he says, the way how he describes it is the poor on one side, the rich on the other, and an impassable barrier between. You know? That, and he says that is the ideal society. So he's in a feudal Europe. There's no Africans around him. He's not worried about no Africans. He's saying that he wants to be on the side of the wealthy with an impassable barrier between, so that the peasants who are growing all the crops or going to the factories or doing whatever, they create all the wealth for the people on the other side, but they themselves never show up. They themselves never pass, right? If that's the case, if that's how he feels about his own people, just like the African proverb goes, if a crocodile eats its own eggs, what will it do to the flesh of a frog? If that's what he says about his own people, right, then yes, he absolutely likes the idea. Like, you might shame him by it, but he's saying, wait, you mean that I can get other people to work for me and I get all the wealth, I get all their wealth, then I did a good thing. You know? I did a good thing. I'm on the side of the wealthy. That's the side to be on. Because I've already divided the world between wealthy and haves and have-nots. I've already divided the world. And if I'm on the side of the haves and I can get the have-nots to give me more and make me have more, then I'm doing well. You, as an African, trying to shame them and say, hey, you took from the have-nots. You took from the have-nots, and that's why you have. They're saying that's a good thing. They're saying that's a good thing. And so so Fanon says, this we are determined never to forget. I don't care. When a colonialist country embarrassed by a colony's demand for independence proclaims with a nationalist leader in mind, if you want independence, take it, and return to the Dark Ages, the newly independent people nod their approval and take up the challenge. And what we actually see is the colonizer withdrawing its capital and technicians and encircling the young nation with an apparatus of economic pressure. So he's going to describe what apparatus of economic pressure is, and obviously we know what embargo, a blockade or whatever. But, of course, why people are going to do this? They do not want you to prosper. Why should they? If they didn't want their peasants to prosper, why should they want you, somebody who's not even a citizen, somebody who's not even related, somebody who's not even, has nothing to do with them, somebody whose existence doesn't benefit them anymore? Why would they want you to prosper? Oh, that's why this brother says, because you're human. I guess he's probably muted. Or he left. I don't know. But anyway. That was a setup. All right. In the current international context, capitalism does not impose an economic blockade solely upon the colonies in Africa and Asia. The U.S., with its anti-Castro policy, has inaugurated in the Western Hemisphere a new chapter in the history of man's laborious fight for freedom. Latin America, composed of independent countries sitting at the UN with their own national currency, should be a lesson for Africa. Since their liberation, these former colonies live in terror and destitution under Western capitalism's stranglehold. The liberation of Africa and the development of man's consciousness have enabled the peoples of Latin America to break the spiral of dictatorships where one regime looks very much like the next. Castro takes power in Cuba and hands it to the people. The Yankees feel this heresy to be a national scourge, and the U.S. organizes counter-revolutionary brigades, fabricates a provisional government, burns the sugarcane harvest, and finally decides to place an implacable stranglehold on the Cuban people. It won't be easy, however. The Cuban people will suffer, but they will win in the end. Janos Quadros, the president of Brazil, recently declared in a declaration of historical importance that his country will defend the Cuban Revolution by every means possible. Perhaps the U.S. too will bow to the will of the people. That will be a day for rejoining, since it will be a crucial moment for men and women throughout the world. The almighty power of the dollar, whose security, after all, is only guaranteed by the slaves of the world, toiling in the oil wells of the Middle East, the mines of Peru and the Congo. Yeah, he's saying the almighty power of the dollar, whose security, after all, is only guaranteed by the slaves of this world. The ones toiling in the oil wells of the Middle East, right? The mines of Peru and the Congo and the United Fruit or Firestone plantations will then cease to dominate these slaves who created it and who continue to drain their heads and bellies of all their substance to feed it. So, yeah, so that's pretty interesting, because he's talking about what will happen with regard to Castro and Cuba. He doesn't know. We know. Cuba's eventually opened up. Castro's eventually dies of natural causes. Maybe shortly before or shortly after, I'm not too sure. But that's what it is. That's what happens. Let's see. But yeah, they take their thing. So the apotheosis, that used to be my favorite word, or one of my favorite words, of independence becomes the curse of independence. Apotheosis of independence becomes the curse of independence. And this is actually pretty interesting, this curse of independence. This is actually an idea that was in place in America. There's this woman who used to work in the Abraham Lincoln administration, or for his wife or something. And I can't remember her name off the top of my head. It's probably in the Pro-Black compendium. But what she tells us is that when the Africans who were newly liberated from slavery, they didn't have much to do. out, like they wanted freedom, they wanted to be outside of the slavery system, but then the economy outside of the plantation wasn't really developed for them, and so a lot of people were kind of just sitting on their hands. Well, yeah, exactly. They had to go back to sharecropping, but a lot of people were just sitting on their hands, like, what, like, will Abraham Lincoln give us something? And so this lady, what she's, oh yeah, okay, this lady, she put down, she said that the cares and vexations of like independence seemed to be, like, she had this nice quote where something along the lines of independence and the cares and vexations of poverty, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me see if I could actually look it up very quickly. So, okay, yeah, so it's Elizabeth Keckley, and she says dependence had become part of their second nature, and independence brought with it the cares and vexations of poverty. So, in the sense that enslaved Africans had actually become dependent as part of their second nature, you know, and their independence brought with it the cares and vexations of poverty. That essentially, if you were not enslaved, you like a lot of people who moved from being enslaved became impoverished. The only other, like sometimes you would have like all black villages that did work out. So the sister Zora Neale Hurston, she grew up in an all black village, an all black town, and she kind of describes her experience there in her literature. And so, yeah, there were occasions where you could have found a land, formed a city, formed a town, and it worked. But a lot of times that was not the case because the infrastructure wasn't there. You said what? You said
Gullah Geechee.
Gullah Geechee? Oh yeah, Gullah Geechee probably. I actually don't know if they were they enslaved though?
Yeah, I think it was some that kind of like fought against slavery or like escaped, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know if they were.
It's like, I would say more like maroon.
Yeah, I don't know if they were like emancipation.
South Carolina.
Yeah. So let me see. The text goes. The comments go. Alma Bookman says, "Greetings, fam." Better Medicine Podcast says, "European." Oh, greetings, Sister Emma. Better Medicine Podcast says, "European philosophy undergirds everything we see them do." Yeah. So Better Medicine went over the difference between European communitarianism and African communitarianism yesterday. So make sure you guys check that out because he really went into that. Yeah. Better Medicine Podcast says they don't care about their own people and they justify it with their underlying philosophy. So in fact, accepted by all, even the peasants. Yeah. And the peasants, you have to realize that when the peasants develop, like when the bourgeoisie are doing good, the peasants are doing good. You know what I mean? And the better the bourgeoisie are doing, the better the peasants are going to be doing. You know?
Are they doing good, or they just want better than they would be if they weren't doing good?
Who, the peasants?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, the way how they frame it.
The word peasants is not necessarily you're living a good life necessarily.
Well, yeah, but like you realize too that it's a part of a political economy, right? So what the lords and the kings did in Europe was they protected you from the other lords and kings. You understand? So, you know, the idea would be that if, like, essentially you're not at war. You know what I mean? You're not at war and you could live relatively safe.
Peacefully.
Yeah, relatively safe compared to the barbarism that you would expect from, like say, like at this time, you know, Germany is just a endless series of intra-racial wars. You know what I mean?
East Bloc, West Bloc.
Yeah. Or say it in German, you know, like East Bloc, West Bloc. You know? They're like it's a like at least you're not there. You know what I mean? All right, so anyway, the apotheosis of independence became the curse of independence. The sweeping powers of coercion of the colonial authorities condemned the young nation to regression. In other words, and so that's what I'm saying though. Like, but even though you might say, hey, you know, the colonial powers are intentionally depriving the colonies. Even so, we have to also take into account that these colonies were in fact dependent on the colonizers. You know? And I mean, you might say, hey, no, the colonizers were dependent on the colonies. Sure, you could say that. But you have to understand, for instance, you just got to walk around Africa and see that how everybody's dressed, you know, or what everybody eats. When you do the breakdown, you realize that their clothes, their food, their clothing, their shelter, like their architecture, all that kind of stuff, their consciousness. I call them the four necessities of race, right? The four necessities, the four basic necessities. All of these.
Something went wrong. They had a parent to go back to, I guess.
Who, the colonizer?
Yeah, the colonies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but the thing is that if your food, the food you eat, is imported, if the clothes you eat, if the clothes you wear is imported, right? If the houses you live in are imported, if the education you get is imported, right? And then you cut your ties with the people importing them, right? Then you suddenly have a shortage of food, a shortage of clothing, a shortage of housing, and a shortage of education. You understand? The issue is and always was your dependence. But you didn't see the dependence because you were like, hey, these people are exploiting me, and they were, right? Because, you know, and it was like they were dependent on you too for wealth reasons, obviously. But the reality is that, yes, there was this mutual parasitism that you didn't peep, in a sense, you know. You know, the way that you produce clothing, for instance, has become archaic, you know, compared to just going to the store and getting some jeans. You know, the sweeping powers of coercion of the colonial authorities condemn the young nation to regression. In other words, the colonial powers say, if you want independence, take it and suffer the consequences. You know, they're not going to keep on sending you rice and chicken and so on and so forth. They're not going to keep doing that, obviously. Why would they keep doing that? And in fact, they're going to make it difficult for you to do that so that you can come back crying. You know?
Like how, let's say, like a teenager or something, like your kid, like you feel like you're thrown down, take it back. Well, I want to do this. I want to be independent of my own thing. I'm going to say less.
Exactly.
You realize you got no money for no bills.
But they're gonna. But see, your parent, if they want you back, if your parent wants you back, they're gonna make it even harder on you. You know.
So you understand what you did.
Exactly. So like maybe you be like, hey, well, can you vouch for me to do? I thought you didn't need me. You know what I'm saying? Could you vouch for me at this job and you give a reference, or could you ask uncle? Yeah, like, could you co-sign? Could you ask the uncle? Could you ask Uncle blah blah to you know? No, I'm not gonna do none of that. In fact, I'm gonna tell him not to do nothing for you. And that's what this response from the colonizers was to the colonized, because they wanted them back. You know, and not just they wanted them back, but at the end of the day, you do not want, like, France doesn't want a powerful Haiti. You know? Why would France want a powerful Haiti? You know? Why would the United States want a powerful Cuba? Why would...
It would be better for the global human experience.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But see, everybody and their mama know America and France ain't worried about no global human experience. You know? They worried about the French experience and the American experience.
So what about the United Nations?
Yeah, sure. The United Nations is worried about the American experience and the like everybody know that. You know what I'm saying? That's why you're not in the Security Council. Anyway, I know I went there. All right, so independents taking on some of the consequences. The nationalist leaders then are left with no other choice but to turn to their people and ask them to make a gigantic effort. These famished individuals are required to undergo a regime of austerity. These austerity is like basically poverty, you know, but voluntarily. These atrophied muscles are required to work on all proportion. Exactly. An autarkic regime, so like almost maybe it's probably similar to authoritarian, I don't know, regime is established, and each state with the pitiful resources at its disposal endeavor to address the mounting national hunger and the growing national party. We are witness to the mobilization of a people who now have to work themselves to exhaustion while a contemptuous and bloated Europe looks on, right? So basically it's going to be hard if you try to be independent, but look, it's worth it. it's worth it. Because you know,
What cost?
the thing is that at one point England wasn't all that. You know, England was, you know, like enslaved by the Romans or whatever, right? And they were just a Roman colony, and it was like crap, right? But you work through it. Obviously, it's 1,000 years later. It probably won't take you 1,000 years, but notwithstanding, you work through it, and you know, eventually England is looking on everywhere, bloated and contemptuous. You know, if you want to be bloated someday, you have to break away from your dependence and go to your independence. You know, and the cost is your dependence. That's the cost. Other third world countries, it's dependence.
Other than, you know, the Western countries, what country has benefited from that?
From what? Independence?
Yes.
Well, I mean, like there's China, Russia, Cuba. You know.
Our idea of independence. How about that?
What do you mean? Your idea of independence?
Because you know, the idea like, oh, well, we're now independent, but you're still speaking the language. You still rely on them for the, you know, importations and etc. Commerce. You rely on them for education.
Yeah.
Political structure. Even even Nigeria and Ghana, so many other nations. They're still their judicial system. They still have like those white wigs and like and stuff like that, right? So all those things, like, are you really independent? You're independent in name, but really in how powerful are you?
Oh, you saying, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. The issue that goes on in Africa is that they never got rid of the dependence. You know, because if you don't get rid of the economic independence, then you're still dependent.
So you're independent in name.
No, exactly. You're politically independent, but economically dependent. And that's a problem. You're supposed to like what you want to do is you want to be economically independent and politically independent. You know, that we really, like I said, it would probably behoove us to not think about that more deeply. You know, I have a book I want to read that might actually touch on the subject, but I'm not 100% sure if it will. So,
Wretched or Earth Part 2?
No, I'll read that later though. This guy, you think that it's like people only have one name for the books? You thinking it's like I don't know. All right, so anyway, other third world countries refused to accept such an ordeal and agreed to give in to the terms of the former colonial power. Taking advantage of their strategic position in the Cold War struggle, these countries sign agreements and commit themselves. The former colonized territory is now turned into an economically dependent country. The former colonizer, which has kept intact and in some places reinforces colonial marketing channels, agrees to inject small doses into the independent nation's budget in order to sustain it. Now that the colonial countries have achieved their independence, the world is faced with the bare facts that makes the actual state of the liberated country even more intolerable. The basic confrontation, which seemed to be colonialism versus anti-colonialism, indeed capitalism versus socialism, is already losing its importance. What matters today, the issue with blocks the horizon, is the need for a redistribution of wealth. Humanity will have to address this question no matter how devastating the consequences may be. So you see what he's saying. He's saying that if the parent, you know, sabotages the child who's trying to be independent, right? And the child says, okay, I concede, right? But, you know, you still got to treat me like an adult. And so the parent's like, okay, sure, I'll treat you like an adult, but you're on my, you know, you're completely economically dependent now or whatever, right? In that sense, right, what you have then is, like you have us in the future, you know, today, us saying, well, you know, the French still manage their colonies by, you know, they're in this French bloc and they still use the franc or blah, blah, blah. You know, we say all that, but it was a part of the French idea all along. You know, they won that psychological battle. You know, they won. The colonized said, okay, fine, we'll do that. And then the people there gave up because they fought. You know, they fought against this colonial regime. And then the leadership that they fought with turned around, or the people had a taste of independence, said, hey, this isn't worth it. And now they have no more reason to fight, because who are they going to fight against now? How are you going to fight against France now when you felt like, when you realized you couldn't handle independence? And now the French are still taking out wealth. And then we, you know, some people in the Pan-African community may be like, oh, well, you see, the French are so bad. In fact, matter of fact, even, you know, Sister Arikana. She was, you know, the French are awful and blah, 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 blah. And the French are killing this, blah, 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 blah. But you realize that the French, like the people there, the people in these French countries already know what happened when they tried to be independent. You understand? But we could rewrite it and say, well, the reason is, you know.
France has the strength to hold on their whole colony.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the psychological battle they won.
Much worse than the British, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's the battle they won, because they probably gave the people the opportunity for independence. Because in real talk they did. There was one country that refused them, and I think it's still impoverished to this day. But there was this one country that refused them, and they were like, okay, fine. But they made an example of that country to the point where other countries were like, yeah, we'll join your Commonwealth. And then now if you're there, if you're in these countries, see, once upon a time, you could have fought the French, you could have fought France in Africa on a colonial level, right? You could have like went out and fought them. Who are you fighting now if it's African people running the colony? You understand? Who are you fighting? Like a fight is, all right, I'll put it this way, in fact, right? Let's say you and me don't like each other, right? You're like, okay, well, say something that's not true, right? Anyway, you and me don't like each other. You have kids, right? Let's say eventually, however, let's say I have, let's say, just for this example, I'm like messing with your life, you know, like let's say you economically, like let's say I'm exploiting you, right? I'm taking advantage of you monetarily, right? You get pissed at me, right? And you and me fight. I guess, let's say in this example you win, whatever, right? I get out of there.
Facts.
Right? Now, let's say it's hard now. It's hard on you. You know, you try to manage this business or whatever, and you realize it's not that good. And you say, only, you know, you got to treat me more respect. And I say, sure. And then I say, I put your son in charge of this operation, right? And now your son is exploiting you. Okay? Who do you fight? I'm not there anymore. But your son. No, I mean, exactly. Or even more importantly, you're not going to fight your son. You understand? And that's what happens when that's the neocolonialism. You know? It's like once upon a time was this outsider. You know? The Frenchman who was there and he was exploiting you and he's living high on the hog, right? But now it's African people, your brothers and sisters, your cousins, living high on the hog. You understand? And you like, hey, my people won't exploit me. Yeah, well, of course he will, because it's the whole system is to exploit you. You understand? If you were getting exploited in the old system, you're gonna get exploited in the new system. I mean, if you're exploited in the same system, you're gonna get exploited whether it's me in charge or your son in charge. You understand? The difference is that you're not gonna fight your son. You get what I'm saying? And this dude had to say facts about everything, and then all of a sudden, when it came to his son exploiting him, he was like, "Well, that's not gonna happen." Like, it's like, "Oh, you know, be only in the fight, easy. You know, don't like own it, easy." My son doing something wrong? Nah, that ain't that. I was like, what? Okay, thanks, I guess. All right. Like, who knew you longer, me or your son? You know what I'm saying?
You come from me, bro.
Okay, man. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? It was commonly thought that the time had come for the world, and particularly for the third world, to choose between the capitalist system and the socialist system. The underdeveloped countries which made use of the savage competition between the two systems in order to win their national liberation must, however, refuse to get involved in such rivalry. The third world must not be content to define itself in relation to the values which preceded it. On the contrary, the undeveloped countries must endeavor to focus on their own values as well as methods and styles specific to them. The basic issue which we are faced is not the unequivocal choice between socialism and capitalism, such as they have been defined by men from different continents and different periods of time. We know, of course, that the capitalist way of life is incapable of allowing us to achieve our national and universal project. Capitalist exploitation, the cartels and monopolies, are the enemies of the undeveloped countries. On the other hand, the choice of the socialist regime, of a regime entirely devoted to the people, based on the principle that man is the most precious asset, will allow us to progress faster in greater harmony, consequently ruling out the possibility of a caricature of society where a privileged few hold the reins of political and economic power without a thought for the nation as a whole. So yeah, so he's kind of like low key saying socialist is a little better, but that's the rhetoric. You know, it's just the rhetoric. It doesn't make much sense. You know, like I said, there's going to be this division of labor because the reality is that capitalist countries to this day have not developed to the point where they do not need, you know, like manual, like jobs done by people who are like by things that are not machines. Like they have not created a totally mechanized economy. And because they have not created that totally mechanized economy, this idea of a privileged few having political and economic power is not realistic, because you're always going to have that amount of people, some people who are going to be on the, like in the, who are going to have a different position. You know what I mean? You're going to have that division of labor, and that labor is going to be pretty extreme. You know, there's always going to be, like, there's going to be a need for a politician. Maybe, possibly, unless you can mechanize that. I'm not too sure, but sure. Like artificial intelligence or whatever. But there's going to be this politician, and there's going to be this janitor. You know, or there's going to be the surgeon, and there's going to be the janitor. You know, and I mean, unless of course, like I said, you can mechanize everything. But anyway, but you have these two entities, okay? They're not going to have equal political and economic power. You know, a society where the janitor and the surgeon have equal political and economic power, it doesn't make much sense. Maybe it's possible. You know, maybe it's possible, but it doesn't seem probable. You know, it doesn't seem probable. And again, like I said, you know, you're also going to have foreigners. You're going to have refugees. You're going to have people that you've dominated, people from the outside, people who have not gone through the same educational system. You're going to have this, and it's going to be this political economic disparity. You know, and it might be like, it's just like, how do you work around that? Those are the questions that I want people to try to figure. And if they can't figure it, then I would just say don't bother talking about socialism versus capitalism, because you don't fully understand what these economies are, you know? But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't fully understand. Actually, brother, let me ask you this. Do you understand how you could have an economy that has political and economic equality between the surgeon, politician, and the janitor? See what I'm saying? He's probably muted. All right. Anyway, so but in order for this regime to function,
I was going to ask you. Can you clarify your question, please?
Oh, like political, economic, like basically, you have an economy where where basically politically and economically everybody's equal, notwithstanding their occupation, notwithstanding their
politically and economically everyone is equal. It'd be pretty difficult to have that.
Yeah. Because I mean, like even politically, is like, because like right here in democracy, you technically everybody has the same vote, technically.
Yeah, everyone has the same vote in democracy. Yeah.
Technically, you know what I mean?
Well,
but then
electoral college, which kind of makes sense.
Exactly, electoral college says no, we don't want that. But I would just meant like technically, but at the same time, you take the vote from people as well. You know? Oh, you're a felon? No vote for you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a foreigner. You know, you're an immigrant. You're illegally here. You know.
If you are a citizen, you have the right to vote.
Exactly. If you're a citizen of a certain age. If you once upon a time you had to pass a test. Once upon a time you had to have land. Yeah. Once upon a time you had to pass a test. Once upon a time you had to have land. And then on top of that, even when you're voting, who ends up on the ballot? Well, that's what I'm saying. Even when you're voting, who ends up on the ballot? Is it you? You understand? It's and like, how much wealth do you need to even show up on the ballot? How much wealth do you need to even be like you need to have a political party? How much wealth do you need to maintain a political party? You know, on top of all that, you know, so it's like, yes, it's open to you. It's open for you to choose between the ruling parties. You understand? But it's not necessarily like your voice then is minimal, because, as you said, it's a republic where technically in a republic The only people that have the political voice are the politicians. That's what the Republic is.
I don't think it was actually. Well, we're talking about the U.S. Then I don't think it ever actually was equally footing well politically either.
Exactly.
Because
Well, but here's the thing: democracy. I want to give people. I want to give.
they can have. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I want to give people a backstory about Athens. So Athens is where democracy comes from, or allegedly, and it's this guy named Solon. Solon is the same person who went to Kemet.
Rambo?
No, Solon. Anyway, Solon is one of the 7 sages of Greece, and apparently he's the one that went to. He's inside of that story. I don't remember the name of the story now, but Timaeus. Right, and when he goes to Egypt, and the Egyptians are like, Solon, you Greeks are perennial infants. Not a single Greek is an elder, right? But anyway, he's like one of the 7 sages of Greece. He forms this thing called democracy, and back then, everyone had a vote on every issue. And so what a democratic republic is that everyone can vote for their representative. You understand? For a representative. And the representative could take, exactly, the representative represents a certain amount of people, and they can so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's not equal.
The logistics, I think the logistics of having everyone vote for every little issue that people don't even care about and know about is just too much to deal with.
Exactly. But that would be political equality.
Yeah.
You understand? What isn't political equality is if somebody else, like basically Obama's opinion on Iraq is more important than your opinion on Iraq. You understand? Even though you're technically both people, Obama's opinion is just much better. Well, it was better.
I mean, at that time.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
I was like, what, 10, 11?
Hey, you probably had some good insight. Probably.
I don't know about 11.
I know, look, I know you did it. You know what I'm saying? I know you look, man. I don't know about today. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Oh, hold on a second. So, let's see. Let's some comments. Okay, Revolutionary Nation says children are often weapons against parents. That's what the public school system is about. Truth. She says greetings, fams. Greetings, Revolutionary Matron.
Greetings. Where you at?
Exactly. He said. Machiavelli said, "Where you at?" All right. Revolutionary Matron says. No, I muted you. I muted you a long time ago, man. Nah, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking, brother. I know. All right, look. Revolutionary Major says, some people enjoy a simple life. The problem is that people enjoy exploiting others. Janitorial jobs are important to the health of the community. Yeah, cleaning is one of the most important jobs there is.
Everybody found out this past year. I'll tell you that.
Oh, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, but cleaning is one of the most important jobs. Yeah, cleaning is important, man. You know, nobody's saying. Now, do you want to go around cleaning though? Probably not. But I mean, that might just be like our male bias too. You know, because like
some people cleaning is therapeutic for a lot of people.
Yeah, but like cleaning other people's matter of fact, yo, I was at this grocery store, right? I saw this dude calling this black man to pick up, like to clean up this vomit that he left cones around. Right, and he's like throwing sand on the vomit maybe to like help it clean up, whatever. But it's like, yeah, man. And for a second, I was like, how dare this freaking, like, it was an Arab guy. Like, how dare you call in this black man to pick up this vomit? But then, of course, but the thing is, the black guy was the janitor. So yeah, so it's like, do you want to clean up? No, you know, would you do it for money? Probably, you know. But like, you know, again. That's a position, because even when you think about this grocery store is one of the, like, you know, if you know about grocery stores, at least in my city, but generally speaking, if you know about any businesses in New York or just around the world, like the businesses tend to hire in their group, you know, except for the, I mean, except for sometimes some of the cashiers, but janitorial staff too. You know, they hire out, like they're really particular with hiring in their own community, but then they will hire out certain things. Because that's what I'm trying to say, that like yeah, if you have to hire out, you'll probably hire other people to do stuff that you probably wouldn't put your son to do. Like what I personally, like my son says, hey, I'm going to be a janitor right now. Like, what am I going to be like, yeah, boy, you got it? Or would I be like, damn, okay. You know, like maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to put down anybody, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a put down, but you get it. you get why, like you get this different economic strata, and you just want for your kid, you know. Now, of course, this person.
You want your kid, you want them to be able to use their mind more than just their body, because that can break down. Your mind not necessarily will break down.
I mean, everything gonna break down, man. But everything breaking down.
Well, bro, like, let's be honest.
Your whole life breaking down, man. You're gonna die, man. We all gonna die.
You done? All right, like I said, as your mind, you're using your mind for your vocation, your career. You use that up to a very old age, whereas your body will break down your physical labor as a career. That's what I'm saying. Much earlier than your mind will.
I don't even know. I really don't know, man. I couldn't tell you that because, you know, a lot of people minds break down. Like your mind. I mean, it depends on what you mean by body versus mind, because, you know, this janitor was kind of old. You know what I mean? Like not old.
Teachers, old professors. Whereas if we're not gonna have an old man on the railroad breaking down like rails and tracks. It's not gonna happen.
I don't know, man. You don't know about John Henry, do you? John Henry could like.
Okay, John Henry, and name me anyone else other than John Henry. I'll wait.
But is there anybody else other than John Henry that you know that worked on the train? like you don't talk about no railroad person, but the person who could beat somebody in a machine. Hey, let's keep reading these comments though. Yo, let's do it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, my son. Right? Anyway, Bit of Madden podcast. I don't know. You have to like you tell me what to do. So keep reading. Like, okay. I'll do that, bro. All right, Bit of Madden podcast wouldn't work well. So Bit of Madden podcast says, I think the aim would be to ensure basic needs for all. Citizenship would understand some would have more, others less, but the have and haves not is not it. You know? Yeah, so some would have more versus some have less. So I want to say about that. So in ancient Africa, in Kemet, for instance, they would leave out food, you know, just like leave food out, like fresh meat or whatever, for anybody to pick up in case anybody was you know, like hungry or whatever, right? And it's just kind of like, it was an example of an older example of a social net, you know? And that right there, I think, is a good system to emulate. I mean, outside of leaving food outside. Yeah, exactly. Like maybe you have some food inside. But like even something even more dignified. But like the reality is that you could have an economy that, like another way they look at it, for instance, some people are flirting with this idea, or I've heard some people flirt with this idea of America going into this UBI, which is Universal Basic Income, which basically means that you...
2020.
Is it in 2020?
I said, yeah, 2020.
Yeah, exactly. But
$1,000 a month.
Yeah, but like, you know, then COVID happened, and it was a possibility, and then it was like, nah, we ain't doing that shit.
But even then, they messed that up. We give you about $600.
we give you about $200 for the, you know, we don't care about your back rent. Shit, you should have had some money stirred up. Hey, but the thing is that yeah, UBI. So UBI is an example of you know, everybody, but like UBI. Yo, he would have won that election if he had put that out. You know.
That's kind of slick, bro.
If he did that, you know, UBI. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, okay, I'll vote for him. I don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but yeah. So that would be, some people have less, some people have more, but everybody got something, you know? But again, if you have UBI, do you still want to do the janitorial work? And that's the big question, you know? Like if you could get, like maybe you'll get a little more being a janitor, but maybe you good with the, but maybe you be alright if you don't. Yeah, I'm about to use that, man. Shit, I might just run for office, man. I might just run for office.
2024.
Exactly. UBI. All right. Anyway, this is why my Revolution Ranger says, this is why my eye is necessary. We must live in balance with everything and stop creating systems that benefit malicious behavior. When all life is valued, we build a society that is more just, right? She says we have to challenge the prevailing idea so that we are caring for all of our citizens, right? Bit of Medicine podcast says facts. Revolution Ranger says facts. Bit of Medicine says hey. Then Revolution Ranger says the idea that one job is more valuable than the other is a justification we use to treat people badly. We cannot. Yeah. So, you know, like I said, more valuable than the other. And it's like, and that's what it says. It's not so much that it's more valuable, you know, because the janitor is very valuable. You know, if you don't have anybody cleaning, you know, then that what's his face? That candy wrapper that was thrown in the corner, right, is now like an ant colony. You know what I mean? You don't want that. However, it's not to say that one's more valuable. It's more to say, like, do you want to pick up after somebody else? You know? And this is actually the issue that we find with like a domestic, families where, like, in some cases, the woman is responsible for cleaning up the house, and it depends on how the man treats that responsibility. If he's, what's his face? Like he gets out of bed and it's like a whole mess, or he finishes his food and he like puts it under the couch or something, like some Taraji stuff. You know what I'm saying? If he's
why would you put it under the couch?
No, real talk. I had brothers and like when they finish eating a bowl of cereal, they put it under the bed or something, like, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to get up. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to get up. The idea is that you just don't want to get up, but you put it out of the way. Like you don't want to step on it. You're not gonna put it on the floor. You know what I'm saying? But like if you doing all this, right? Like, even though a woman might be happy to clean up because she probably likes that. Yeah? Huh? What do you say? Shit, you understand? So anyway, so you do all that, right? You don't clean up after yourself, and like to an extent, the wife could be happy about that. But if you're doing all that nastier stuff, like for instance, like let's say you just finished eating and you don't wash your hands, so you got barbecue sauce on the remote control and stuff, right? She might just. There are slobs in this world. I'm not saying that. I'm just giving examples. I'm giving extreme examples. You know what I'm saying? I'm giving extreme examples. Like maybe, well, the point is that you gotta meet her halfway. Even if you're not cleaning, even if you're not washing dishes, even if she's like, I don't want you washing dishes. You were. You said what?
Hand her the dish.
Yeah, maybe rinse it off before you put it in the machine. Something,
Hide the spoon under the cushion.
Yeah, you said what?
How did cook the spoon under the cushion?
Don't people do that, man? Like there are slobs, man. You might not, like, you're not a slob, okay, right? But there are slobs in this world. There are people who are not going to do like there are people who are gonna, like, for example, I used to live with my brothers, and that's what it was. Like, when I used to live with my brothers, we would, when we finished eating, we would put the plate in the sink, but none of us is gonna wash the other person's dishes. You know what I mean? Like somebody had to, but none of us was gonna do it. And I mean, exactly. Let's told. And then when we were told, we was like, "Why I gotta clean up after this person? This person used 10 dishes, and I only use 3. And like I only use 9. You know what I mean? Like why don't they? You know what I'm saying? Like you were like that. I mean, when we were younger, that's what. I mean, I had a different thing, but I won't even talk about that, I guess. But let's see. Revolution Major says we cannot. Your idea is not worth more than my labor, right? Okay. So Revolution Major says him doing nasty stuff is a sign of disrespect. He does not value her, nor does he value himself. Yeah, exactly. So
his love through his actions.
Exactly. Him. I mean, like him. Wanting to watch the game, and he's like, just whatever. Or he dropped the food in the corner, and he's like, well, she gonna pick it up. Like. Look, man. Some people have that. I'm not gonna hold y'all. That's a reality. But anyway.
I just imagine a slob that got greasy face and everything doing that.
Sure, she married him. She should have figured that out.
Like she complaining, but she married you.
Yeah, she should have figured that out from jump. Like as soon as you go to his bachelor pad and you see that you see the ass print of the last woman there. You see the cobwebs, and you like, well, I still like you. You got some money, okay, honey. Well, he cute though. Okay, well, shit, you look good. Good luck in the matron outfit, the maid outfit. All right, anyway, but yeah, it's not so much that. You said what? Exactly. He's good luck with the apron. So you better know how to move a couch. Wait, when you on the couch and you shift forward and it don't move, it's stuck on him. All right, let me stop. I gotta finish reading this thing. All right. On the other hand, the choice of a social regime, blah, blah, blah. So, but in order for this regime to function feasibly and for us to constantly abide by the principles which have been our inspiration, we need something other than human investment. Certain undeveloped countries expend a huge amount of energy along these lines. Men and women, young and old, enthusiastically commit themselves to what amounts to forced labor and proclaim themselves slaves of the nation. Can you imagine that? The spirit of self-sacrifice and devotion to the common interest fosters a reassuring national morale which restores man's confidence in the destiny of the world and disarms the most reticent of observers. So again, you know, this is actually something that we see inside of these nations that did pick themselves up. That, see, what happens with America is that America did have an enslaved population that it could use in order to extract wealth or whatever. What you said? What?
People in check.
Yeah, well, I mean, but they got wealth that way, right? Russia and China did not have this foreign African population to enslave, so they did work their own people, you know? They did work their own people. Or they worked, you know, the other people around them, but they did work their own people. You said what?
Tibet, Taiwan.
Oh, yeah, Tibet, yeah, exactly. Mongyar, whatever. All that kind of stuff. So like, that's just a reality. So he's saying that this is something normal, that if you build a nation, you want people to be self-sacrificing, you know? Because otherwise they're not going to catch up. They're not going to catch up.
The thing is, people, it's like in the Bible, if you want that, then you're going to have to be nationalistic, but then people frown upon that nationalistic ideals too, so you got to pick something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, you can frown on it, but, you know, China's doing good for itself now.
It's effective.
It's right. There are white people in China right now complaining about how they can't get no citizenship. You know, how they can't be treated right. You know, but it's like, yeah, boy, you know, no, but look here. But like you just said, you in Africa, you could molest a child as a white man, and they're gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. You in China, and you molest a child? Oh shit, boy. Shit. You know what I'm saying? Shit.
Alibaba or AliExpress, he was gone for a minute.
Who?
CEO of Alibaba, AliExpress.
He was gone for a minute?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
He went to like these camps, like re-education type of camps.
Damn!
You talking to Greasy right now.
Damn, Daniel. All right. But yeah, that's what I'm saying though. Like, bruh, but that's what I'm trying to say. If you a foreigner in China, man, because like you can't even drive it, you can't even own a car, you can't work, you can't get a citizenship, you can't do nothing without a Chinese identification pass, and you ain't getting one.
I think they keep track of you.
Keep track of you.
They got their own Facebook, WeChat. They got their own YouTube. All that.
Yeah, free, sure. But that's what I'm saying. But like a little bit of self-sacrifice once upon a time by some Chinese peasants once upon a time created one of the strongest nations on the planet now. You know, possibly.
But we also have places where that doesn't work. North Korea.
You said where it doesn't work?
Yeah, but they're getting subsidized by Russia and China anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like a part of it is because they have to be militaristic. You know, we have to realize that. Yeah, we have to it's nothing is foolproof. Nothing is guaranteed to work. You know, yeah, exactly. There's nothing that's guaranteed to work. But you know, it's worth trying. You know. Is North Korea, you know, South Korea, do we like South Korea bet more? Probably, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I ain't going to North Korea.
Well, of course you. Hey, I mean, look, I don't think you're gonna have a choice. I don't think you're gonna have a choice. Exactly, unless you, you know, color your hair, plug your nose or whatever, maybe. But yeah, no, yeah, you ain't got no choice. So I mean, if you had a choice, yeah, you choose the only choice you got. Anyway, a spirit of self-sacrifice and devotion to the common interest fosters a reassuring national morale, which restores man's confidence in the destiny of the world and disarms the most reticent of observers. We believe, however, that such an effort cannot be sustained for long at such an infernal pace. The young nation is set to take up the challenge after the unconditional withdrawal of the colonizer. The country finds itself under new management, but in actual fact, everything has to be started over from scratch. Everything has to be rethought. The colonial system... You said what?
That's what we failed, to be honest.
Exactly. The colonial system, in fact, was only interested in certain riches, certain natural resources, to be exact, those that fuel its industries. Up till now, no reliable survey.
They didn't invest in them anyway, because once they didn't get all they're there for is for the resources.
Exactly.
You can't get it. Why are you there? There's no point.
Exactly. Up till now, no reliable survey has been made of the soil or subsoil. As a result, the young independent nation is obliged to keep the economic channels established by the colonial regime. So look at that. As a result,
they already know the land they stand on, how what it's about, what it's composed of. That's the horrible thing.
You said what?
They don't even know what the land they're standing on is composed of.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what you expect from like what happens.
That's why they have to go back and run.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You expect that because remember that when the colonizers come in, they took you away from the soil. So when you come back to the soil, it's not even you coming back to the soil. You know what I mean? Like you never really come back to your own soil. You understand? I mean, maybe rarely, but even so, unless you, I mean, like maybe like say for you might have like a traditional village that you can go back to that wasn't really moved by this industrial system. But even let's say if you were to go back to your traditional village, would you have knowledge of the soil where you're at? No, because you're coming from America or something. You know what I mean? Like you're coming from the city or some crap. And then of course, if you say the advanced surveying that might have taken place, that might not necessarily be the case, because the people that might have survived in your village might be the people that didn't know. You know, like maybe the people who died in your village were the people who knew. You know, like who were sitting, like who was like, hey, you know, England is over there. We have to organize a fight and so on and so forth. And I mean, yeah, they might know that it's a good place to grow sorghum and so on and so forth. But then they go out, they meet with England, they think they're going to be victorious, and they're killed. And the people who are left behind are like, well, what did we grow here again? You know, I mean, like you don't know. I mean, maybe that's like an extreme case. You know, maybe they kept up their economy. But again, and here's the important thing too. Who have they been reporting to all this time? Because if you were reporting to the local chief, now there's a president from a whole different, like, you know, in the middle of whatever city that they're supposed to be, and your village is in the middle of nowhere. At one point, did you establish a communique with that, with Lagos or wherever? You know, at what point did you establish a communique with Lagos? You never did, because if you were talking about a historical village, you've never had to report to Lagos. It's the only reason why you're reporting to Lagos is because the colonizers came in and said, hey, I'm going to be stationed in Lagos, so everybody report to me. You understand? So yeah, there's no survey. There's no, and then the scientific survey that you might think is something that people would have had, they didn't have in your little village. You know, they can do that scientific survey in Lagos, but whether they can do that in your village is out of the question. You know, you don't have the lab, you don't have the laboratory, the dirt sampling and all that kind of stuff. You know, like you might have grown something in your little village, but who knows if it was the most economically viable thing you were growing, because you could have just been growing something just to grow it. Up until now, there's no reliable survey has been made of the soil or subsoil. As a result, the young independent nation is obliged to keep the economic channels established by the colonial regime, right? And can, of course, export to other countries and other currency zones, but the basis of its export remains basically unchanged. You see, they still have, like, the colonial system set up the economy to the point where the other economy, like in order to keep supporting this new nation, you still have to, you know, like basically that you still have to rely upon the colonizer. So the colonial regime has hammered its channels into place, and the risk of not maintaining them would be catastrophic. Perhaps everything needs to be started over again. The type of export needs to be changed, not just their destination. The soil needs researching, as well as the subsoil, the rivers, and why not the sun? In order to do this, however, something other than human capital is needed. It requires capital. Something other than human investment is needed. It requires capital, technicians, engineers, and mechanics, etc. Now let's go back to your little village, right? And no disrespect, right? No disrespect, but your village, does it have capital? And I'm not saying maybe your village now does, but what I'm saying is, like, once upon a time, does it have capital? Does it have technicians? Does Does it have engineers? Does it have mechanics? And of course it has technicians, engineers, and mechanics in its own way, of course. But does it have the technicians, engineers, and mechanics that are needed for an industrial economy? And, you know, usually that's not the case. You know, there could be exceptions, but usually that's not the case. Does it have the capital to the capital basically meaning what do they have to exchange for this machinery, and they don't have anything of value? Because what they were exchanging for machinery was like tea or cocoa or whatever, you know, that's what they were exchanging. So let us confess, we believe that the huge effort demand, and this is why capitalism is what it is. It's because, like I said, like he's outlined earlier, the bourgeoisie in Europe had this capital, had these technicians, engineers, and mechanics. They had these things, and that's why they could develop into these large industrial economies. But if you don't have these in Africa, then you can't necessarily do that. And so the question of socialism versus capitalism still maintains this colonial system in a sense. But what it does is that it says that the capital and the engineers and the technicians and the mechanics will be provided by the government. But the government doesn't have anything. You understand? And the way how it works for these for the capitalist countries is that the capitalist countries already have these stuff. They already have the technicians, mechanics, capital, and all they need to do is take out the capitalists, take out the bourgeoisie, and the proletariat will then control all their technicians, engineers, mechanics, and capital, and use that to the benefit of all their people. But if you have a country that doesn't have the capital, doesn't have the technicians, doesn't have the engineers, doesn't have the mechanics, then you can't do that. And this is why, of course, I say in my own literature, you know, Boko Waset Nakeru, the Book of Power, where I explain Boko Waset Nakeru, I say, you know, you have to develop these technicians, engineers, and mechanics. You understand? And not doing that is one of the troubles, right? So, and he's going to say the same. He says, let us confess, believe that the huge effort demanded of the people of the undeveloped nations by their leaders will not produce the results expected. See, they will not produce the results expected. If working conditions are not modified, it will take centuries to humanize this world, which the imperialist forces have reduced to the animal level. And, you know, you don't have to blame the imperialists for reducing us to an animal level, although I'm not going to say we're at an animal level. But more so, we have to understand that we do not historically have the capital, engineers, technicians, so on and so forth. I mean, we did have our own, you know, we did have our own version of these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those correlate to an industrial economy. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we were like finna build factories. But anyway, some countries which have benefited from a large European settlement acquire walls and avenues with their independence and tend to forget the poverty and starvation in the back country. In a kind of complicity of silence by an irony of fate, they act as if their towns were contemporary with independence. So he says some countries which have benefited from large European settlements acquire walls and avenues with their independence and tend to forget the poverty and starvation in the back country. So yeah, he's saying that sometimes when a country is independent, they keep up. Whoever benefit from a large European, so like they keep up the walls. Like they have these walls and avenues. They have these cities that the whites built, and they just keep up on those cities, and then forget about the poverty and starvation in the back country. So you kind of see this when you look at the Congo, where they have some nice looking cities, you know, nice roads filled up, whatever. But you know, the back country, there's shanty towns, there's starvation, there's just huge poverty, and this is like all over Africa, obviously, but it is what it is. So anyway, so the truth is, we must not accept such conditions. We must refuse outright the situation to which the West wants to condemn us. Colonialism and imperialism have not settled their debts to us once they have withdrawn their flag and their police force from our territories. For centuries, the capitalists have behaved like real war criminals in the underdeveloped world. Deportation, massacres, forced labor, and slavery were the primary methods used by capitalism to increase its gold and diamond reserves and establish its wealth and power. Not so long ago, Nazism transformed the whole of Europe into a genuine colony. The government of various European nations demanded reparations and the restitution in money and kind for their stolen treasures. As a result, cultural artifacts, paintings, sculptures, and stained glass windows were returned to their owners. In the aftermath of the war, the Europeans were adamant about one thing: Germany will pay. At the opening of, so I don't know which war he's talking. Oh, I guess he's talking about the World War II. So look, he's saying in World War II. So this is something really important to understand. Germany was impoverished after World War I. Before World War I, Germany was like a series of nothing, right? And they eventually, Otto von Bismarck, gets up. He says, well, let's be one German people. Forms this Germany. Germany becomes this massive superpower rivaling England. They fight England and France. France and England win. And then they are forced to pay reparations, and they become really poor. And so then Germany gets up again, says, you know what? No, we'll do it better this time. This is under Hitler. Hitler cries to fight. He modernizes and industrializes Germany to some extreme level, very efficient, to the point where white people believe it's like one of the most efficient nations that ever exists, right? And that's, of course, white people saying that, right? But they lose to the French and Germans and the Russians and the Americans, right? And what happens is that Germany is pissed about it. But what's important to realize is that when Germany is dominating France, when Germany is dominating Britain and so on and so forth, they're taking stuff. They're taking their cultural artifacts, their paintings, their sculptures, and so on and so forth. But when these other people beat them, only after they beat them, they demand them back. So Germany and England and France, they take African artifacts and also cultural artifacts and so on and so forth. But the difference is that you demand them back without beating them. Without really beating them. You understand? That's the difference. So he says Germany will pay. At the opening of the Eichmann trial, Mr. Adorner, on behalf of the German people, once again asked forgiveness from the Jewish people. Mr. Adorner renewed his country's commitment to continue paying enormous sums to the state of Israel to compensate for Nazi crimes. So let's see what that's about. So he says, it's true that Germany has not paid in full the reparations for its war crimes. Compensation imposed on the conquered nation has not been claimed in full because the injured parties included Germany in their anti-communist defense system. The injured parties included Germany in their, so the Germans were a part of the anti-communist defense system. So they recruited Germany to their cause, right? The colonialist countries are motivated by the same conferred when they try to obtain military bases and enclaves from the former colonies. Failing their integration into the system of the West, they have decided by common agreement to waive their claims in the name of NATO strategy, in the name of the free world. And we have seen Germany receive wave after wave of dollars and equipment. A strong and powerful Germany back on its feet was a necessity for the Western camp. It was clearly of the interest of a so-called free Europe to have a prosperous reconstructed Germany capable of serving as a bastion against the threatened red hordes. Germany had manipulated the European crisis. Consequently, the U.S. and the other German states feel legitimately bitter towards this Germany, once brought to its knees, and now one of their most ruthless competitors on the market. Germany is pretty powerful right now. And that was even back in the 50s. Let me check the comments. I forgot to check the comments. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Him doing Nazi stuff. So he says she has decided to trade her affection for money. Revolution. Yeah, she's talking about the lady who's cleaning up after this dude. So remember when them whitey boys got caned in China back in the day? Damn. Okay. Malema, give the land to the poor. So she's saying Malema, Julius Malema of South Africa is about give the land back to the poor. Yeah. And she says they lied about that all they knew. The Eurasians went to Africa, stole the knowledge, destroyed the original texts, and asserted that they knew everything. It's the fault of the imperialists. And of course she goes, to this day, the West owes Africa a debt, because apparently a bit of medicine was just saying to this day randomly. Anyway, all right. So at the same time, we are of the opinion that the imperialist states would be making a serious mistake and committing an unspeakable injustice if they were content to withdraw from our soil the military cohorts and the administrative and financial services whose job it was to prospect, for, extract, and ship our wealth to the metropolis. So imperialist states would be making a serious mistake and committing if they were content to. So he's like, at the same time, we believe, like essentially, this is actually pretty important. One of the things about every economy is that you have to protect trade. Okay, you have to protect trade. Like if you're every political system has to protect the economic trade. If you're not protecting the economic trade, then your political system is useless, right? So what happens is this. Because like it goes like this. In fact, like a lot of times people would complain about, and actually in Jamaica, they would say that you could like rob a bank in Jamaica, or there's like bank robbers in Jamaica, and they use this against Jamaica. But the reality is that you have to be able to protect this wealth concentration of this financial sector. You have to be able to protect, and if you have to protect workers on their way to work, because people could rob people going on their way to work, and this is just a normal thing. And in fact, one of the things that really put me in this mind space was when I was reading Garvey and Garveyism, and this was obviously talking about the 1900s or whatever, right? But I think it was like some Latin American country. I can't remember the name of it, but there's like if you were going to work in that area, you could be stopped by bandits, And if people who play video games or like role-playing games, they know that bandits are people that would attack your role-playing party or whatever. But this is the reality of the world, that if you were moving products from, like if you had a caravan, a trade caravan, you would hire merchants to protect that trade caravan on its way from one stop to another. And there would be people that would be actively attacking these people once upon a time. Now, if you remove these authority, the king, if you will, who is managing this trade, who is safeguarding, who's sending the merchants, who's sending the knights, who's protecting the merchants and protecting the trade routes, if you remove that king or whatever, then actually this human element that we don't really take into account because we ourselves don't experience it, this human element can resurface. So like the crimes that you see that might be plaguing other communities, that is something that could be more widespread if you didn't have this police authority or this colonial regime inside. And notwithstanding that also means that this new nation has to do what this colonial regime was doing, which was keeping the bandits and the pirates and the thieves at bay, right? But then you, like the common person, might not necessarily understand why. But I'm just explaining that, yeah, you actually have to do that. So at the same time, so let's go back and read this again. So he says, at the same time, we are of the opinion that the imperialist state would be making a serious mistake and committing an unspeakable injustice if they were content to withdraw from our soil the military cohorts and the administrative and financial services whose job it was to prospect for, extract, and ship our wealth to the metropolis. So again, there was this dependence on the colonizer to prospect for, extract, and ship the wealth to and forth, So moral reparation for national independence does not fool us, and it doesn't feed us. The wealth of the imperialist nation is also our wealth. At a universal level, so there's, again, the wealth of the imperialist nation is not your wealth. It's not. It's not. But this is where the socialist kind of misunderstands the global economy. And this is where the confusion comes in, because we're always talking about what's morally good, and it might be morally good to share the wealth of another person with you, but it's really not the case. The wealth of my neighbor isn't my wealth at all. At a universal level, such a statement is no way means we feel implicated in the technical feats or artistic creations of the West. In concrete terms, Europe has been bloated out of all proportion by the gold and raw materials from such colonial countries as Latin America, China, and Africa. Today, Europeans' tower of opulence faces these continents for centuries, the point of departure of their shipments of diamonds, oil, silk, and cotton, timber, and exotic produce to this very same Europe. Europe is literally the creation of the third world. The riches which are choking it are those plundered from the underdeveloped peoples. So again, the gold, cotton, silk, timber, all of these things were not necessarily yours per se. But it goes back to this idea that if it were yours, then you should have protected it. If you can't protect something, it's not really yours. That's my belief. And that's the belief that white people have, actually. But that's the belief. It's like, realistically speaking, you didn't own the timber. The timber was in proximity to you, sure, but you didn't own the timber. And if anybody owned the timber, it might have been the chief, and the chief said, yeah, sure, you can take the timber. You understand? It's like we have to be a little more realistic. Ideally, sure, if I'm living in a hut next to a forest, you might say, oh yeah, that's Oni's timber. You might say that. But again, it's like, if you're being realistic, you will know that me just living next to a forest doesn't make the forest mine. You know, and if you are using this if you're selling this forest, the forest timber in Europe for a good profit, you know, doesn't mean that I'm entitled to a cut of that profit. You know, we tend to think like we're like, you see Fanon, he's considered a brilliant intellectual. He may articulate that, yes, in fact, that timber is ours. You know, like we're entitled to a cut of that, but it really doesn't make any sense. And if nobody else is going to tell you, at least I will, you know? Anyway, so yeah, that was interesting. All right. So Europe is literally the creation of the third world. The riches are choking, blah, blah, blah. The ports of Holland, the docks of Bordeaux and Liverpool owe their importance to the trade and desperation of millions of slaves. And when we hear the head of the European nation declare with hand on heart that he must come to the aid of the unfortunate people of the undeveloped world, we do not tremble with gratitude. On the contrary, we say among ourselves, it is just reparations we are getting. You know, so again, you know, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. All right. So we will not accept aid for the undeveloped countries as charity. Such aid must be considered the final stage of a dual consciousness, the consciousness of the colonized that is their due, and the consciousness of the capitalist powers that effectively they must pay up. So let's see. In footnote 12, he says, to make a radical distinction between the construction of socialism in Europe and relations with the third world, as if our only relation with it were external, is knowingly or unknowingly giving priority to restructuring the colonial heritage over the liberation of the undeveloped countries. In other words, constructing a deluxe type of socialism on the fruits of imperial plunder, as if in a gang were to share out the loot more or less equitably, even if it means giving a little to the poor by way of charity and forgetting they are giving back to the people they stole from. So again, this is what the white people do. White people will let you think that they are stealing wealth from you. You know, they'll let you think, and it kind of just confuses the whole thing. You know, you have to look at it from an independent standpoint and say to yourself, you know what? I would rather use the timber for myself. I'd rather keep the timber myself. I'd rather keep you out of my forest. I'd rather not give you anything from my forest. You know, but this whole idea of, hey, give me a little bit of what you're selling, right, is kind of begging, you know, and it's what white people want from you the way white people want you to think is that they're entitled to your resources. Oh, not even your resources, but they're entitled to the resources around you, and you are not entitled to it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're entitled to recompensation for the resources around you, right? Whereas what you have to do is you have to say, no, I'm going to protect these resources. I'm going to decide what happens with these resources. And not just these chiefs that you bought, but me, like the Pan-African nationalists, you know, the Ancobia or whatever, right? So anyway, if through lack of intelligence, not to mention ingratitude, the capitalist countries refuse to pay up, then the unrelenting dialectic of their own system would see to it that they are asphyxiated. Yeah, okay, sure. It is in fact that the young nation attracts little private capital. A number of reasons justify and explain these reservations on the part of the monopolies. As soon as the capitalists know, and they are obviously the first to know, that their government is preparing to decolonize, they hasten to withdraw all their capital from the colony. Duh, why would you keep your capital there? The spectacular flight of capital is one of the most constant phenomenons of decolonization, because you don't want to risk it. Why would you have millions of dollars hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment in a war zone, right? Why would you leave hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment in a war zone? Because you're not going to get it back. You understand? Like you're not going to get it back. It's like if you think that a tsunami is going to wipe out your house, you try to move everything of value outside. You don't leave it there. Like, sure, after the tsunami, you might come back, but you particularly want to grab what it is that you think is of value. And in the terms of capitalists, the capital is the value, right? So yeah. So in order to invest in the independent countries, private companies demand terms which from experience prove unacceptable or feasible. True to their principle of immediate returns, as soon as they invest overseas, capitalists are reluctant to invest in the long term. They are recalcitrant and often openly hostile to the so-called economic planning programs of the young regime. At the most, they are willing to lend capital to the young nations on conditions it is used to buy manufactured goods and machinery, and therefore keep the factories in the metropolis running. Yeah, so that's pretty obvious. Why would the capitalists want to, why would the capitalists not want that? That's the ideal circumstance for the capitalists. The ideal circumstance for the capitalists is to, work with a country in order that they can still profit in that country. The idea that they should just come and work in the country and no longer profit in the country doesn't really make any sense. And this is why I said the socialist kind of has a confused outlook on life. And what it does is that when you fall into the socialist trap, if you do fall into it, you kind of get a little confused too. So hopefully I made it a little bit more realistic. But anyway, that's actually up to page 60. Revolutionary Matron says, so violent overthrow it is. There's no humane way out of this. Yeah, there's no humane way outside of violent overthrow. Because yeah, why would there be? You know, like if you're not going to threaten the people who are doing you harm, then why would they not do you harm? You know what I mean? It doesn't really make sense. If I'm stealing from you every day, you know, and then you say stop, and I say, well, I'm gonna keep stealing from you anyway, and you say stop, and I say, yeah, sure, I'll stop, and then I keep stealing from you anyway, right? If you then like punch me in the face and say I told you to cut it out, maybe I'll stop. You know, if you slice my neck, then sure, I'm stopped. Yeah, I stopped. I'm dead. You know, but that's what life is. You know, you can't just, you know, sure, you could say, hey, stop doing that. But if these are people who are doing things according to how much violence they can exercise on you, kind of like the gangbangers in the black community, right? The gangbangers in the black community, you can tell them, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Hey, you're shooting at black people. Hey, blah, blah, blah. The only thing that could stop a gangbanger in a certain area is either another gang or the police or the feds. You understand? I think Biggie Smalls had a line where he says, only the feds I fear, you know? But like, yeah, it sounds like some pum pum stuff, sure. But the reality is that, yeah, that's what it is. You know, if you're physically dominant over another population, right? If you could shoot anybody on the streets and nobody's going to do anything unless you shoot a police officer or a white person, right? Then yeah, you're going to keep shooting these black folk. If they're not going to do anything, if they're not going to stop you, you know? Now you might stop if it's a rival gang, maybe. You might stop if it's the feds, definitely. If it's the police, definitely. But if it's just, you know, mom and pop, no. You know? This is the power of force. Revolutionary says, oh, the IMF. But yeah. All right, family. That was it. That was the whole podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent, but, you know, hopefully you learned something. And we actually went through a whole week of this Black August. So make sure you check out the programs going on today. Obviously, like I said, Revolutionary Matron's coming on later today. She says at 8 o'clock. There's also going to be, you know, Bitter Medicine podcast tomorrow. He's going to be shooting the breeze. Then, of course, you can catch me again on Sunday at 11 o'clock. Hopefully a little shorter. I'm not going to read no 12 pages, but what it is. Actually, I'm going to read some Amos Wilson. You imagine that? But other than that, thank everybody for joining. Thanks for listening. And hopefully I'll hear from you next week or even on Sunday. But other than that, talk to you later. Shem Yem Hotep. Ooh.